Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for coming. This is the roundtable discussion for the movie Heart of Man. And we're going to have a great time jumping into a lot of dialogue. But I figure we start with just introducing each one of you, making sure that you know who we're with today and what we're talking about. This is Mike Foster, and he is the founder and the author of People of the Second Chance. He heralds from the great city of San Diego, and it's great to have him on today. This is Tracy Wild. She is the author of a great book called Finding the Lost Art of Empathy, and is a dear friend, known her for a long time. This is my friend Propaganda, and he's an artist and has an album out called Crooked, and is from the great city of Long Beach, which is one of my favorite places in the world. And this is Bruce McNichol, and he's the president of True Face. It's an honor to have you on the show today, sir. We'll call it a show, but let's jump right into the first section of the film. I loved it. I loved the whole film. I don't know about you. Yeah. You could just agree right now and just go, yeah, it's the best film I've ever seen. Incredible. Okay, great. It was like Braveheart and then this. Great. But I love the opening because I was grabbed immediately. Yeah. And while I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, I've never seen the imagery in this way. The relationship with the son, the father, the table. I was thinking, gosh, who made that table? That's not Restoration Hardware, huh? But true. But I was thinking this table, this first section of the film, is it's so strong in its depiction. And I want to start by asking the question to you guys today: what am I being invited into with God? Is it good? Is it behavioral? Or is it relational? What jumped out to you in that first section? What are some things that you felt and noticed and thought of as we come to this first section at the table? What is this table? What does it represent as an invitation from the Father? I don't know if anybody, if Long Beach is over here, San Diego's over here, we got a president over here and an author over here. I don't know who we want to start with, but is there anybody that wants to take it first and go like, I thought this when I was watching that first section?
I'll jump in. Yeah, I think it's the sense of belonging, I think, for me, is what that table and what that moment kind of represents. And notwithstanding just how just beautifully shot it is, you know what I mean? Because that's one thing I've really had a hard time getting past, which is how visually amazing it was. Right. But I think the sense of belonging, and speaking from just sort of an inner city kid, you know what I'm saying? In even if you're trying to get your brain around how does a young man get involved in gang activity or why specifically in hip hop, why saying where you're from and your city, why is that so important? It's a sense of belonging, you know what I'm saying? Without getting too big, but just as an African American, there's really no homeland. You don't know, I don't know, I think somewhere in Africa, but that's the second largest landmass in the world, you know what I'm saying? So there's no sense of origins, right? At least that you learn in school, you know what I'm saying? So just this idea of but you belong, you're one of us, is something that has always sort of been something I've wrestled with and struggled with. Wow. But just the image of that is for me was that's immediately what I went to, was this sense of belonging, you know what I'm saying?
Powerful. Yeah. Powerful, absolutely. What about you, Bruce?
I caught from the Father's eyes the sense of embrace, that those are eyes that they are windows to his soul, and his soul says, I've got you. I'm embracing you, and I'm going to give you the best, better than you imagined. And I think the music, of the violin is illustrating that. So I loved the Father's eyes. It just melted me.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the question: is it good? And right now, when you're saying that, the eye contact, the warmth, it wasn't a look of behave this certain way and then you could belong. Yeah. It's you belong. I'm looking at you. You are, in other words, an apple to my eye. There's fondness. There's relationship here. There's you before you do any right note or playing behavior, you belong. And I think that struck me as well. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think for me, as I looked at that scene, it was just a sense of safety, the sense of being accepted. I think everybody at the table in the movie, has has this real knowledge of our own brokenness and our past, our stories, and whatever they might be, whatever they might look like, that we could sit at a place and be accepted and belong. And I think it's in that sense of just feeling safety and knowing that, it's not all working great, it's not all perfect, but I can relax, I can enjoy a meal, I can be in community. And this to me is like the problem with so much of the dysfunction in our lives is that we feel afraid, that there's fear instead of love.
Wow.
And so as you said, that table, you're just sense like the foundational element is love, which is driving the safety, the belonging, the community, and I think the sense that it's going to be okay, whatever it is.
Right. Absolutely. I want to get back to that table in just a moment. I want to land on that for a moment. But Tracy, what was it for you watching that, going, this represents what to you, this first scene? What was your initial response watching that?
The first thing I thought was, this is how it's supposed to be.
Wow.
You know, like anybody, like we're all saying the same things. Like everybody has a seat at the table. Like here's a woman sitting at the table.
Right.
I put myself in that. Like everybody has a seat at the table.
Right.
And it was as if it is supposed to be, as it was always meant to be, just like Eden. You know, I had this picture of the garden. Like, you know, we've been exiled from the garden, but we're all trying to get back. Maybe I'm stretching the metaphor, but it was like the table is the garden. Like we're trying to get back there.
Right.
And you saw that picture in like the Father's eyes, and you see God welcoming you back to the table, no matter where you've been, no matter what happened, how much of exile you went through.
Right.
But to me, it was, this is how it's supposed to be.
Absolutely. You could sense that right away. It not that it feels archaic, but there's no technology.
Right.
It's not in the city. You know, they shot it in Hawaii. My God, why weren't we invited? Could we not do the roundtable discussions
Wouldn't be a part of that.
in Kona?
Yeah, right.
I'm just proposing it for next time.
Just saying.
Or when we do Heart of Woman. Anyways, Chad, don't get carried away. Let's not get carried away. Let's stay focused. But I think that, you know, I'm glad you said Eden, because that was something I sensed was this is foreign. This is this possible? To have a relationship with the father, they're playing the violin together, and the connection is so strong. I want to connect with my dad that way.
Yeah.
I can connect with the Father in heaven this way. This is unbelievable. Wait, this table, this is like, we used to go to the Golden Corral, but this is better. Like, this trumps Old Country Town buffet. Like, this is unbelievable. I want to ask that second question now. The table. What does the table look like? I know in the movie we can draw, you know, some details from what the table looked like there. But what does that represent? The table. You kind of touched on that. Can we go back to you for a moment on that?
Yeah, I think the table is a place where I can bring my true self, that I can bring my whole story. I think so often we live in a day and an age, whether it's in a religious context or just a cultural context, where it is not safe to be myself.
Wow.
That there is always something that we're hiding or protecting and wanting to hold back or censor.
Sure.
And so the table is a place where hopefully it's a place of friendship. And whether I know your story or not, I know that you have both pain and beauty inside of you.
Yeah.
And that there's brokenness, but there's also this divinity inside of you. And that we can bring all of it and know that we are bonded by the sense of, at the table, we can be ourselves.
Right. Powerful. Bruce, what did you get?
I got a sense of the relationship coming from the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. The reason we respond to the table and all its relationship is that this is the way they live and love and lead together.
Right.
And they want us to be a part of that grace. And so it reminded me of the reason that this faith is a faith of relationship, because they've been living and loving this way for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, you could get a sense. We didn't just throw us together for Thanksgiving. This was not an event.
Yeah.
This is the lifestyle. This happens every day. This is part of our routine in this family. We're gathering, we're celebrating, we're talking, there's communication, and there is, like you said, there's safety here. And I think that's a big takeaway of this first scene of going, not only am I attracted to it, but do I have this? Do I enjoy this in my life? is this missing from my world? Because wow, does it look adventurous?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's definitely like the imagery jarring in the sense that like I'm such a city boy, so like not really an outdoorsman. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I think, is it cold?
Yeah.
Like, are they? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, the idea that like, but gosh, it sure is beautiful. But I was struck with that none of that even mattered, or that no one's really trying to get the Father's attention. That he's just he's just there, and they're engaging in their own.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And for me, I think that that's such a great picture too of like you said, the relational part, but the interrelational between us around the table, where we're not like vying for his attention, and
Wow.
you understand what I'm saying? Like, no, we're good. I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
we're all good with him.
Yeah.
So that means like I'm free to just like be with my sisters, my brothers, you know what I'm saying, and just like and live life and enjoy the goodness of it,
Right.
without like worrying, am I offending this person, offending that person? Am I
Right.
taking too much?
Right.
You like me best, right? Like, we're still good? Like, no, like, it's not even like my concern right now.
Right.
You know, we're in this moment.
Right.
And I can enjoy my brother and my sisters.
That's
Yeah.
right. Because the way that I relate with the Father actually bleeds out to how I relate with other
Yeah.
people. And if I'm good with him, that means I am good with you.
Yeah.
And there is no disconnect within that. You could sense that there was a feeling of, there's no Cain and Abel.
Yeah, we're not in competition.
No, there's
you know?
no, that's the right word.
Yeah.
There's no competition because of how good we are with the Father. It's not even that there's has to be so much chemistry and camaraderie here. It goes back to this relationship. He's the one that's provided this. This is on his bill, but he's created this ecosystem for us to all rest in. Absolutely. Tracy, what are some thoughts you had about the table?
Yeah, and I think you referenced it just a little bit. It's like we didn't have all the things that distract us. Like there wasn't this disconnect between humanity, human to human. It was connection because we didn't have our phones. You know, you didn't have all these distractions, and maybe that is you're outside in the elements.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But there was just such a safety and a security in just communicating and community. And God created us to be together. He created us as relational beings. He created us for that community environment, and they were doing what they were created to do.
Right.
And they felt, like you were saying, they felt that connection with one another because they felt the connection and the security from their Father.
Absolutely.
And I loved that. It's like it made me want to go, okay, let's all go to dinner. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
we've done this with our friends, right? We'll all put our phones in the middle of the table.
Right.
The first person at dinner that picks up that phone, they're paying the whole bill. And it made me go, I want to do that more.
Right.
Because I want that connection with my friends, my family, the people that God's put in my world.
Right.
But we have to be, I think, intentional in doing that.
Totally. I think another thing that really stood out to me, there was two thoughts I had. Number one is, you alluded to this, it's the provision part of God. That God has provided not only a seat at the table, I thought of Mephibosheth. And unqualified, what's this guy doing at the table?
Yeah.
That all of us kind of feel that way, like, I don't belong at this table. Like, if you really knew the brokenness in my life, but the only reason why I've got a seat here is because that guy invited me. I know you might think I'm crazy, but I am, and I get to sit here. That's what's wild. That's grace. The Father has provided all of this, and He's invited people that might not even feel worthy to sit here. And you talked about that. Not even feel worthy, but we're sitting here at this table. I loved it. What a great first thing, because now you piqued my interest.
Yeah.
You touch some buttons right away that I'm going, okay, where is this going?
Yeah.
Why would anyone want to reject this?
Yeah, I even think of like just in me, like, if I'm honest, the cynicism that would almost like peek into this and want me to say that's corny because these people don't have a care in the world. I got a gang of cares. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, you could just sit down in the forest and enjoy yourselves. Must be
Yeah.
nice. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But yeah, it is.
Right.
It is nice.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And yeah, you're right. They don't have a care. You know, but it's not like they don't have. Again, of course they have cares.
Right.
Of course they have passion. Of course they're bringing all those things to the table. And I
Right.
think that, again, if we lean in, it's like, yo, that's the point. You know what I'm saying? The cynicism that flares up is because, again, you feel like you don't deserve to be there.
Yeah.
Right?
Like it's
Right.
too good to be true.
It's too
Right.
good to be true. This
Right,
is not
right,
my reality.
right.
But yes, it is.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that, like, that's the great that makes me, again, as a Christian, say I have to stay into this film because I don't want to believe that this is possible.
Right.
You know.
I don't want to believe that this is possible, even in the sense of multi-generational.
Yeah.
This is the table in this scene especially is a picture of family. And immediately I was going like, I want this with my dad, and I want this with my family. There is no chaos. There is no brokenness.
No family drama.
There's no family drama.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Like, what did you guys do that we didn't do? You know, like the table is a representation of relationship, right relationship. And I looked at the first scene and I thought, okay, I'm down. I keep watching. Yeah. You know, one of the things that really jumped out to me was the violin and the relationship. And I don't know if you noticed, but when we got a shot of the back of that violin, it was a Hebrew word there. It's the word timshel, which really means thou mayest. And right from the beginning, the movie is alluding to the reality that you and I have free will. This is our choice. We have this opportunity to come to a table. We have this relationship with the Father, but none of it's forced. It's there for the taking, but it's your decision. What are some impressions you guys had as you saw that in the violin and the reality of that?
Well, I was curious what, I could tell it was Hebrew
Yeah.
because I studied it. No big deal.
Yeah.
But not enough to know what it said.
This is awkward because I read it. I was like, oh, Timshel.
Oh, weird.
That's funny.
I was curious, like, what does that mean? What is that word? And,
Right.
But yeah, and like in understanding now the context of it, it makes so much sense to that open scene of it was a choice. You sensed that. No one was being forced. No one felt like they had to sit there and stay there, and no one seemed
Right.
awkward.
Right.
But that's just who God is. God has given us this opportunity, and He welcomes us. And it was welcome. It was like there was such a sense of people could come and go as they please, but everyone wanted to stay there once they got there. They just
Amazing.
felt that.
I think that because I same thing. I was like, oh, it's cool. He chiseled a Hebrew word in there. I wonder what it means. But you saying that actually, I think lays another layer of complexity in the sense that like that choice was a gift. You know what I mean? So it's not autonomy, but it's the gift of choice. You understand what I'm saying?
Beautiful.
Which
Yes.
still says, as a father, that no. I love you, and there's still an element of you're not out of my care.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So in the midst of my care, I'm going to hand you free will, right?
Wow.
So to me, it's like that, because autonomy is terrifying,
Right.
you know. But I think that in the context of my Father's love for me, I'm handing you this choice. And now knowing that that's what that says, like I think it speaks much more
Right.
volumes. to
Right.
me now.
Tagging on that, I felt like the Father was saying, I'm going to coax you, I'm going to nudge you, I'm going to invite you to trust me. And to trust me maybe more than you trust yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
That really got to me when I saw the interaction with the violin going on there. You going to trust me, or are you going to trust yourself?
Wow. So powerful.
Yeah, I think it just speaks to the heart of God, that the dominant, overwhelming expression of God is love. And love comes, at the expression of love then is freedom, the sense of choice, where the opposite of love is fear, and fear, the expression of fear is control and compliance and gripping, versus a sense of love is a surrender.
Right.
To say, I love you enough. I believe in you enough. I have created you in my image. You will make the right choice. Now, we make many wrong choices.
Sure.
But all of it, to me, every right choice, wrong choice, is about God actually moving us closer to knowing His love.
Right.
And so I'm not afraid of actually bad choices.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay. That's part of the plan. Because I think one of the things that's so beautiful about the beginning of the story of the banqueting table is that, yes, it's a perfect picture of love and acceptance and beauty, but the table's going to get better as the movie goes along. Right?
Yeah.
Because we're going to see some different choices that make that experience even richer when we come back to it.
Yeah, I thought laying this foundational piece from the start of the movie was so critical to me, because I think you see the table, you see the violin, you see the intimacy, you see the eye contact, you see the beauty of a relationship with a father, and it's basically saying like, hey, at any point, this is still your choice. All of this is here. You have the opportunity anytime you want. You've got your seats waiting for you. We'd love to be partying with you and in community and in relationship, but just so you know, we're never going to force this on you. This is, I always want to play with you. I always want to commune with you. But this is your choice.
But you said a mouthful with the word "with."
Yeah.
And it's not you're playing for me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Or I'm gonna. And it's
Yeah.
like no.
Yeah.
You ready, son? Like and
Right.
that participation
Right.
in not only who I am but who the Father is.
Right.
Notwithstanding when this kid learned how to play the violin. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But if there's some sort of like assumed narrative,
You're right.
that when you talked about being your true self, like I wonder if that kind of sings to that, like the true self, like when it dances with the Father, like you're making music with him.
Yes,
You know what I mean? Like that's who you really are.
Wow.
And like you said, yeah, it's up to you. But what I'm trying to tell you is this is who you really are.
Right.
And that's amazing.
I want to segue into the second section of the film, which is the sea. And I want to ask a question I think is to me, it's the most powerful part of the whole film. And it's where we really start getting into the character of God and the Father, the heart of the Father, the face of the Father. So this is the question. What is God's facial expression towards me, even in the moment of giving in to temptation? In my darkest moments, what does his face look like? I thought Paul Young, his piece on it was so powerful. He said it took him 50 years to get the face of his own father wiped off the face of God. I mean, that to me was like, that was the line of the movie for me. Yeah, exactly. But right away we're seeing, is this how I see the Father? What did you guys think there?
Yeah, I had a variety of emotions, and I still do. When, thou mayest, but how about when I don't make that right choice? What's the character of the Father in my life? And I remember my own dad being a good dad, but not being a perfect dad, and so I remember both faces. When I made the right choice and when I didn't.
Right.
And when I didn't make the right choice, there was a lot of triggering of not acceptance, but performance. And so I have to do better next time. And the relationship with the Father, my Father, would break for a period of time.
Wow.
And that hurtfulness still comes to me from time to time when I think of the Heavenly Father.
Wow.
And so I don't know if maybe Paul got it all wiped off, but I haven't got a perfect slate when I don't respond as with a healthy choice.
Yeah, I think there was a similar like fickleness, that comes from this idea of like even with my own father, like I've kind of always seen him as two different people. There's this like larger than life. My father was involved in the civil rights movement. You know what I'm saying? He went to Vietnam. Like he was this Black Panther. Like he's just this. And if you were to read about him in a book, you're like, "Doc, this dude's amazing."
Wow.
But he also was not that same dude at home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like you said, the amount of fond memories I have of him, I have just as many like. You have incredibly disappointed me. You know what I'm saying? And I want nothing to do with you. Like there's both of these men like wrapped in one, right? but he was one of the most encouraging people when it comes to like my art, right? So
Wow.
he was always like, you're talented, there's something for you.
Wow.
So out of that, it wasn't for his love, but it was like, so become a good performer.
Wow.
Because when you perform,
Then he's-
that's when dad's patting you on the back.
Yeah.
Like, and that's he's coming to my games, he's seeing my, you know,
Wow.
recitals and stuff like that. And that's when dad is proud of me.
Wow.
Is when I'm killing it, right? So then even seeing the father in the film play the violin with him, it's like I almost got nervous. Like, don't miss a note, don't miss a note. 'Cause
Right.
we're playing together. We're supposed to be making music together, you know. But the what struck me, there's two things that struck me, one good and one bad. The one thing that struck me that was, I'll start with the bad, was that like, oh, here we go, another old white dude playing God, right? And I'm like, the last thing I need to see. And you want me to relate to this dude? You feel me? Like, I'm supposed to like feel some love in this dude's eyes? Like, you know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, there's another white guy playing God. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right.
like, so there was that, right? But, so that was the bad part. But I would say, but in the good part, what you saw was like, there was such a joy. Like, it's almost like the father had pleasure playing with the son.
Wow.
It wasn't so much like, oh, I'm trying to
That's
entertain
it.
my son. It
That's
was like,
it.
no. This is my joy.
Wow.
Right? So now when I think about like even my own children, you know, when I'm counting merch, if you will, like when I'm about to say, my daughter wants to help. And I'm
Right.
like, you're gonna count it all wrong, right? I'm gonna have to recount this. You're not really helping.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
But I want you here because you're my
Right.
daughter. I'm
Yeah.
enjoying this time with you, right? So I think that, you know, the overcoming like the socio-cultural and ethnic like
Right.
issue I had there almost even pushed me further into saying, but see like above those challenges, like a God that still just desires, like I'm enjoying my time with you.
Right. Wow. That's profound. I love the word you use, fickle.
Yeah.
Because that's it. I think you know, because we have human parents.
Right.
And they're forced into living fickle lives, like we all are. So there is going to be that. I had an awesome father, but you know, there's two sides of him because there's two sides to all of us. You know, but it's so relatable. Mike, what was something that stood out to you?
Yeah, just to maybe play off of propaganda, you mentioned the word disappointment. And I'm not exactly sure what the face of God looks like when I'm making poor choices, but I do know that it's not disappointment. And I think there's an interesting study that they asked believers, you know, was the overwhelming feeling that God has for you. And whether we're doing right or wrong, the survey comes back saying that the majority of people, Christians, believers, think God is disappointed in them. Sure. That they're not measuring up. Even if they are making really good choices, they still feel like they're not enough. And so this sense of and disappointment is a natural human response to poor choices, but that's where it gets really messy. And that's where the problem comes in, is we start attributing human attributes and human common sense to how God's reaction would be to jumping off into the water, versus saying, you know, I do know that God's main relationship with me is love. And so I've got to believe that whether I'm doing great or doing horrible, whether I'm with him or away from him, the overwhelming emotion, feeling, posture, face that he has for me is a face of love and acceptance. That's
so powerful.
We have to hold on to that.
Yeah. Well, and what you're saying, I really thought what was so profound about the movie was it helped me remove myself from being just this Jesus person. Because I'm so Jesus saved me, he healed me, he through him is redemption and forgiveness for our sins, and it's all about Jesus, and thank God for Jesus, because if not, the wrath of the Father's so disappointed in me. But I'm the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. And when he looks at me, he doesn't see me, he sees Jesus because he became sin for me. And so it's Jesus, and the movie really helped me go like, wait a second, I can actually sing that song. He's a good, good father. You know, but it helped me take a step back to God.
Yeah.
The Father, wait, where has he been? I love Jesus so much, but the Father, I'm afraid of him. I'm scared of him. So this helped me even personally rewrite who he is in his character and his nature. God is love. There is therefore, no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. But you know what? God loved us and gave us Christ Jesus. It was the pursuit of the Father that wanted this relationship. So I thought it really helped me personally in this section to see the face of the Father correctly.
Yeah, I know when I was growing up, I was kind of an awkward kid, geeky kid. I know that's kind of hard to believe.
No way.
It's like I wore glasses, braces, broken front teeth. I was a bit of a mess in high school, physically, emotionally, all of it. And my dad, I actually I'm one of the lucky ones. I have a great dad, and I always thought, like, I wondered if my dad wished I had a girlfriend in high school because I never had one, or I wish my dad thought I was more athletic or at sports, or was a starting forward on the high school basketball team, which I wasn't. I was a geek, a nerd, skinny, unathletic. I was all these things that I did not like about myself, but I knew that, like, even though in my own story I felt like I was failing, my dad's always saw me. He could care less about any of that other stuff that I was so concerned about. The only thing that he was so certain of is that his love for his son. And that to me is sort of we get very much caught up in the stuff. Whatever the story looks like, whatever the failure looks like, whatever we jumped off the cliff 5 times, 50 times, it doesn't matter. Like, God's relationship is like, I see you as my son and my daughter. That is the relationship. It's like the prodigal son story. Far away, he runs away, like, son comes back with the speech, trying to prove his worth, just put me to work, as one of your workers. Like, sorry, I don't do that. I only do relationship with sons and daughters.
Wow.
And so, like, that's the stuff that we got to get off of ourselves, and our human context, our own sort of self-loathing and self-condemnation that's in us, our own performance. We got to get rid of all those ideas and get back to, I'm a son and daughter of a Father who deeply loves me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So powerful.
And like you said, the context, that's, even if you had a good father, the theme and the narrative of the film, and I think what we're all saying is the picture that we give God is the father we had, our earthly human father.
Right.
Whether it's good or bad, I realize for me, I have to remove that. I did have a good father. And to me, my dad was larger than life. 6'5", played college basketball, this big guy. I remember being on the playground in kindergarten, and it was this banter between kids, saying, my dad's stronger than your dad. Do you remember doing this?
Yeah.
And it had escalated. It had started like, my dad can lift, a lot of weight, or my dad could, tear that tree down. I had somehow it got so escalated that I said, my dad could lift that car up with his pinky. That's what I tell everyone in kindergarten, because my dad was larger than life. Wow. My dad was strong. So then in my course of life, when bad things happened to me, or things that I didn't expect to happen, I was crushed when I didn't see God being so strong, or the way I needed him to be strong.
Wow.
Now, my perspective of my dad wasn't bad, but I had put that on God, this context, our cultural context, our emotional context, the historicity of our life and our stories, and all that comes together, and we project it on God, and then we're disappointed when God isn't who we want him to be, who we think he needs to be, what we expect him to be, because God is so much bigger than all those things.
Wow.
And I realized as I was watching it, I'm like, I didn't have a bad dad. But I still was projecting things that I've expected God to do for me.
Wow.
And that has affected my relationship with receiving his love, like knowing who God really is, and not putting that on, just letting God be God.
Yeah.
I feel like that's freeing to us if we're like, okay, God, I don't understand it all, but I'm going to trust you.
Right.
I'm going to come to the table. I'm going to trust you.
It's amazing. Darkest moments, worst moments, how we see him just in everyday life really determine when we're in those moments if I'm coming back or not.
Yeah.
And that and it's an old saying, but conviction leads us to God and condemnation drives us away. I think condemnation though is also rooted in a false reality, a false picture of who the Father is. Let's talk about that just for a moment. In the darkest moments of our life, how do we even grasp that the Father is still inviting this violin relationship? Like, how do I wrap my mind around that? I'm betraying his trust. I'm hurting his heart. I'm fleeing from his presence. I'm not coming to the table. I don't want to be at the table right now. I want to be enjoying all this other stuff. And it just feels like too big of a climb, number one. And number two, does this guy really want me back? Talk to me about that moment. In my darkest moments, can I trust him? Is he good enough to take me back?
That's what he's trying to prove to us, that he's good enough. And he is not on a timeline. He will take our entire lives to convince us that on our worst day, he is crazy in love with us.
Yeah.
That's, it says that the Father gives all these good and perfect gifts.
Yeah.
That's the gift.
Yep.
That's the joy
Yeah.
that you're talking about. Or that's the face, where he's not disappointed. He's coming after you.
Right.
He's loving you.
Right.
And so I think about that on my worst days. I think when I've made not one, but several unhealthy choices in a
Yeah.
day.
Right.
And I go, gosh, what I need to remember right now is that face.
Right.
Yeah.
He's going, bring it.
Yeah.
I want you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want you at this table.
Wow.
So here's some more food. Here's some more
Yeah.
wine. Take it in.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what he's trying to convince us of.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Perfect gift.
Like a timeline, I think that it's a journey. And
Yeah.
God doesn't give up on us. We got to keep.
Right.
We just got to keep going. It's the journey. Like,
Right.
Eventually, that picture is going to change. Eventually, you're going to see God. You're like, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us are there yet. We
Yeah.
keep trying to get to this destination, but I think God's just all about the journey. Like,
Right.
keep looking at me.
Yeah.
The picture's going to change. It's going to get better and better.
Yeah.
But when you said timeline, that's what it made me think of. It's a journey, and that just gave me hope. And then I got a better picture of God right there, like smiling, like, you're there. That's who you are.
Well, and I think, let's say I come back to the banquet table and everything's restored and it's great and it's awesome and I last a year or so, but what if I go back again? The only thing that would bring me back to that table is if I'm convinced of a good father, the right father. He does still love. We're so cause and effect.
Yeah.
We're so conditional in our human nature. It's so hard to grasp or comprehend an unconditional love. And I think it goes back to Romans, what Paul says, it's his kindness. And if I can see a father that is kind, it's his kindness that leads us to repentance. Why in the world would I ever come back and pick up that violin again if I didn't believe he was so good and gracious and kind and loving and faithful and merciful and all the things that we know him to be true, but we somehow have put our own father's face there?
That's part two of the table and the relationship that we talked about earlier, is that sometimes somebody else has to go get the violin and bring me back to the table and say, you know what, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
What are you doing, man?
Yeah.
This is who the Father is, so let's start playing again.
Wow.
Yeah. That climb, to me, the image of the climb, because to me, that's what I think about, where I'm like, if I'm in those like dark moments, and it's like I'm sitting there, it's LA traffic. You're like, I have to go to the valley. At some point, I have to get to the valley. So
Right.
you're just sitting there going, but drive, you know what I mean? So like, and sometimes the sheer traffic, threat of traffic alone is like, man, I'm not going nowhere, So sometimes that's the one for me, to where I'm like, I know once I get there, it's gonna be amazing, but I'm like, but the work I'm gonna have to do, and the work oftentimes becomes my focus. Or let's just say you do, and then I'm sitting there, and then you're like, again, that sense of like, I really don't deserve to be here. Kind of goes back to the point to think that, well, that's because you actually thought you deserved to be here the first time.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So like,
Sure.
so the whole time you had a false sense of,
Wow.
right? So and then it's a gut punch again. Like,
Right.
I still don't get it.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
And yeah, so exactly, like you put yourself on this like 3 strikes you're out like type
Wow.
thing. Like you did that to yourself. Like,
Right.
so you're like, because if you were sitting in the seat of the Father, you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Do you not want to be here, bro? Like,
Yeah.
look, man, you don't want to be here. It's fine. So I think of that, and I think of like, as corny as it is, as frustrating, it helps having, for me, it helped having my own kids to be
Right.
like, as enormously irritated or frustrated. I don't trust any parent that says their kids don't get on their nerves, I don't trust you at all. Because I'm like, then you don't love them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't love your children, or you're not there, right? So I'm like, so your kids should get on your nerves. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So in there, but like when I have no nerves left, I'm like, but when dinner comes, I'm still gonna make you. What are you talking about? You are my daughter. You know, and you're still my daughter. There's no amount of F's you can come home with. That's gonna like make you not my. What?
Right.
You know, and how, oh my God, how devastated I would be if my daughter was like, Daddy, I thought you didn't love me if I did this. Like I would just be crushed. Like, baby, like, oh my. What did I do? Oh my gosh, what did I do? How am I communicating? I'm not communicating correctly then, because there's nothing you can do that can change that.
Wow.
You know, and just how heartbroken that would make me, right? So, and I have to learn how to like, okay, so I know I'm not the best picture of it. I know my dad's not the best picture of it, but I know that feeling is the picture of the father, where it's like,
wow.
Doug, how dare you think I don't want you here? Like, yeah, you stepped in a huge pile of dog poop.
Yeah.
Should I call it poop?
Yeah,
Should I
that's
say
good.
that?
That's good.
I'll
We're
say
all right.
poop just in case. Okay.
Drop it on the table.
Yeah, you stepped in duty. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
Restoration Hardware where we can clean it.
It's all good, you know. Yeah. So you step. Of course, I'm not gonna ignore the fact that your foot stinks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But that's because I love you.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's what we're trying to get after. It's
Yeah.
like, what is the face of the Father when I'm in the moment of my sickness, my chains, my bondage, my perversion? When I'm in these moments of temptation, and then even giving into that, does the Father sit there with a cheesy grin, going, still love ya?
Yeah, right.
Like, what is his face? Does he feel disappointment? Because I think the imagery I got from the movie was concern, compassion, care. It wasn't harsh.
Yeah.
And we think harsh. We think disappointment. Going back to what most Christians believe about God, I disappoint. We all feel that innately, like, he has to be disappointed because I'm disappointed in myself. How could I go back to that? Why did I do that thing? I told God I would never. I'm so mad and frustrated at myself. Surely he feels the same, right? Like, how do we wipe that off?
Yeah, I love the sense of longing that father has
Longing.
a longing to, you know, I've given you something better, and I'm going to keep giving it to you. I'm not stopping here.
Yeah.
And so I'm inviting you again to enjoy this.
Yeah.
God is always more interested in our tomorrows than our yesterdays.
Yes.
Oof.
And he has got his mind. He has got his sights on that for me.
Yes.
And that's why it's not disappointment.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's more longing, or as
Yeah.
you were saying, he's going after. He's loving me in the midst of all my stuff.
Yeah.
I love that in the movie, that sense of longing.
Yeah. Totally.
And he keeps looking, like he doesn't turn away.
That's right.
You know,
He
like
goes after it.
some people's image of God is that, you know, and it's for some it's an ancient belief that God created us and then he has nothing to do with us. Like he can't be bothered by humanity. But you know, there's a lot of, but I believe that's in modernity. I think a lot of people today think similar to ancient thinking, which was that God may have made us. There probably is a God out there. I'm just not totally sure he's interested in me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I always think of that in I think it's in Psalms. It's like God cares about every detail of our life.
Yeah.
So when I saw that the Father like kept looking at him, he didn't turn his head, and it was this not concern, but compassion and longing and. But I loved the idea that he does not turn his back. He doesn't turn away. He's looking at you. He's going to keep that eye contact. How terrible are we at eye contact today?
Oh, man.
We can't keep it for very long, but God just keeps looking. And he's not this distant, far off being who doesn't care about you, who's not invested in you and just like do whatever you want, or it's not disappointment. He's none of those things.
Yeah.
He's very intimately involved in every detail of our life.
Wow.
Yeah, there's at the before the boy runs and walks off the cliff, which was like, did we all go right? But before that,
do it.
yeah,
Don't do it.
yeah. When they were sitting at the table and he sees his son like looking another way. He just kind of looks at him like, okay. You know what I mean? Like, just that moment of like, in the face there, it's almost like you see dad like going, I know exactly where this is finna lead.
Yeah.
Like, I'm telling you, son, this is gonna suck, dog.
Yeah.
Like, this is gonna suck, dude. You know, and the overwhelming sense I get is like, he's like, dog, I'm bummed for you.
Yes.
Like, where it's like, you are about to go through some crap right now, dude. And it's like, and I'm bummed you're there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think that, you know, I mean, without being corny, or free book plug, you know what I'm saying? Just the lost art of empathy. Like, to
Right.
be like, and I think that that's what you're looking at right here is like, I like, oftentimes if somebody's mourning, like a lot of times you want to go there and like, well, cheer up, or like try to pull you. It's like, no, like sit in this with me. You know what I'm saying? And that's an art. And I think that like this film kind of took me there to where, you know, God is like, yo, I'm sitting in this with you. And it's,
Yeah.
like, I really,
Yeah.
I'm bummed.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm bummed you're going through this.
It's so
You know what I
Luke,
mean?
it's so
Yeah.
Luke 15 to me. It's
Yeah.
so prodigal son.
Yeah.
It's the dad here's your inheritance.
All right, dude.
You're walking down the gravel
Yeah.
road,
Yeah.
and I am sitting there going like, hey, Tim Shell, I gave you free will. This is your choice. Do you realize the heartache and the pain?
This is gonna suck.
This is gonna hurt you, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna woo you back. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
waiting. I've got a signet ring and a robe and,
Yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah,
and
yeah.
a party waiting. But I think getting that picture of the Father, it's everything. Because I believe Joseph Prince says, right believing leads to right behaving. And if you believe right, we have these friends in Australia, and the wife told me the most amazing story. She said their twin girls were in class, and the teacher gave them an assignment. Said, draw a picture of your father's face. Both girls, twins, they came home with the picture of their dad's face, and the dad's face was smiling. And the wife says to the husband, hey, great job. You're winning.
Yeah.
Because they got, this is the image they have in their head. The first reaction is to go, my dad smiles. And I just wonder, for us, when we live our life, what picture do we have of the Father? Because if he's not smiling, I'm not coming. I'm not running home to that. At some point, the prodigal son, it says he comes to his realization, comes to his senses, and he goes, Dad's better than this.
Yeah.
Welcome to the roundtable for the movie The Heart of Man, Chapter 3, The Cliff.
So just in terms of the cliff and the face of God, as we are talking about that, I think sometimes we forget that there's a reason why we're jumping. And I think a lot of our stories, we do these destructive things or we make poor choices because there are things that have happened early on in our story. And we see that throughout the movie in terms of the stories that were shared, is that there's trauma and pain introduced early on. We live in a fallen world, right? So there's this brokenness, not necessarily even by our own choice. We're victimized, we experiencing something painful, maybe our parents go through a divorce, or something that is like a bomb is dropped off in our souls.
Wow.
And so the sense of when we do make the choice later on to do destructive things or things that don't make sense or things that where we run from God, all of it's, God looks at that and he goes, he knows why. He knows the story.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so there isn't a sense of, and when I'm working with people, I always try to think about not what they're doing right now, but thinking about how we got here.
Yeah.
And it's so easy for me to sit in judgment in that moment with somebody if I'm looking at what is going on right now.
Wow.
Versus if I look at the sense of like, oh my gosh, there's a bomb that went off when they were 8 years old.
Wow.
And they're still living with that trauma and the pain and the confusion. And so compassion, like just, and I think whether that's compassion, the compassion of God, compassion towards ourselves when we do make poor choices.
Right.
We have to understand that there are reasons and beliefs and things that have got planted in our personal theology about who we are that lead us to do things that are contrary to really the freedom that God wants.
It's amazing.
You know, you take that thought and move it from the individual to the systemic, right? Which is something that you said a mouthful, right? My buddy Sho Baraka says that, like, you know, we as being image bearers have become like creators and cultivators, right? So you have flawed people making flawed systems, right? And set them up, right? Which almost sets a conveyor belt that we all just run off the cliff with because the system is flawed, right? Because flawed people made a flawed system, right? And like you said, nobody just wakes up in the morning and says, I'm gonna do self-destructive behavior.
Right.
There's a context, right? So if you take what you're saying, that there's a history that's blown off. So like that history might be the Three-Fifths Compromise. That history might be the Indian Removal Act. That history might be redlining, might be Jim Crow. It might be, you know what I'm saying? It might be there's a million things that creates structures, right, that cities and people and people groups sit in, right, that would cause them to say, this is the best choice, right, to somehow secure my survival, my resources, and my happiness. Because, but it's so if you can, like you said, understand people's decisions in context rather than sitting at home watching the news and being like, look, they're rioting, they're destroying their own neighborhood. Why would they even do that? You know, if you just comply, then everything will be, it's like, okay. There's a history here that you're not acknowledging. You know, and knowing, like you said, that sitting at the end of that is saying God understands the context. So yes, the cultural memory, the collective identity, the collective suffering, the collective trauma that comes with flawed people setting up flawed systems. Right. That ultimately are, like he's doing, looking at another island and saying there's something there for me. Right. And I not only want it for myself, I want it for my posterity. I want it for everybody. So you're setting up a system, right? And then we just sit in that, and the conveyor belt takes us off a cliff.
Wow. That is amazing. And I think, you know, going with that whole, whether it's a conveyor belt and it's a cultural broken system, or whether it's ourself, the reality is that we're going off the cliff. And I want to go there for a moment because I do think that was such a powerful moment of the film. Is that we've all been there at the table where it's temptation's arrived. We know the Father's still watching. And he's even behind us going, no, don't do it. And yet still blatant. Can't shake this. Made up my mind. James talks about it in the Bible where it's desire, but now it's conceived. It's given birth to something. I'm going to willfully, knowing what I'm doing, I'm going to walk off this cliff. I don't know all the consequences to this, but I'm willing to venture here. And that's a long fall. By the way, I don't know if we used a stunt in that scene because that's
that dude's a stud.
Yeah, he's a stud.
Total stud.
He held himself pretty good there, you know. But I was like, whoa, Michael Phelps. But I got her on that one. But I thought this is an accurate picture here. This happens to us. It was one of the times in the films. There's a few I'm sure that all of us can relate with, but I'm going like, I know that feeling. I've been there. I know it. Why is that do I look that foolish? Do I look that dumb? Is the fall that big? I think it's little, but this is showing me a visual of how big my sin is. I want to ask this question. What are some of the lies that shame has created, and what is the lie that we believed about the Father? Because now you're falling, you hit water, you're coming up, and you're going like, I just did that. What is the lie that shame tells us?
Yeah, we relate. I think all of us relate to that jump.
Yeah.
But the issue for me is that I haven't just made that jump once.
Wow.
I've made it time and again. I think shame does for us what multiple consequences will do, and it causes a hopelessness. I might as well jump anyway, because this thing is hopeless.
Right.
I'm addicted to
Right.
whatever this is. And so I jump again. Shame says, different than guilt. Guilt says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm broken.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this will never get better.
Yeah.
And that's the lie
Wow.
that causes me to keep jumping.
Yeah, it says that cliff is unclimbable. Like you're at the bottom, you're like,
Right.
well, getting down was easy.
Yeah.
Getting back up.
Right.
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 So to me, it's that. It's like that was so dumb.
Right.
There's no way. Like you can't climb it. There's no.
Yeah,
can't climb it.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? There's a scene later. I'm not sure if we're gonna get to it when he's like running to the shore and he's trying to like row his way back, and it's like, we're Californians, you dummy.
Yeah.
You're
What is
gonna
this,
like
Castaway?
you really think you could you see them waves, but you really think you could do this?
Right.
So that to me it's that. It's just like, and what am I gonna say even let's just say on some miracle I get to the top. What I'm gonna say then?
Yeah.
Like-
right.
What I'm gonna say? You just watched me walk off this.
Wow. Right.
What am I gonna say to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So good.
And I think shame, like you were saying, like we think we can never get out of this. It's like it becomes a label. It becomes who we are. And I love this quote. Charles Spurgeon, I think, is one says, "Don't rely too much on labels, because far too often they're fables." And I think that we've let shame label us. I mean, any of us who've preached ever and given an altar call, if your church tradition does that, give one for shame, and you'll feel really good as a
man,
preacher
yeah.
because half the congregational respond to it because.
Yeah.
We do. It's something that we've all bought into, and we do it. We think it's this pattern we can't get out of because we've allowed it to be a label. We've let it label us. It's like this is who you are. You're never going to get out of this. It's the lies. It's the enemy trying to say that. But I love that. It's like stop listening and relying on this label.
Right.
It's not true. It's not true of who you are.
Right.
But you have to get yourself out of that pattern, and that destroys us. It's like a disease.
Yeah. It stays with you.
Yeah.
Shame is one of those things that if you don't deal with it correctly, and again, it goes back to the picture of the Father. If you don't deal with it correctly, shame can walk with you for a long time. It's not this guy that shows
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
once a year. Shame's just, it becomes almost an innate part of who you are.
Right.
And that's why going back to the picture of the Father being so powerful is because what releases us, what appeases shame, it's not our behavior.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not our do-goodisms.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to your point, all the studies, all the research says the only thing that can release shame in our life is radical acceptance. It's not self-help. It's not hyping ourselves up, telling ourselves we're good enough, we're smart enough, doggone it, people like us. It's really what breaks. Thank you. What breaks the power of shame is bumping up into God's radical acceptance of us, just as we are. And that's powerful because shame says that we are not enough, that we're not good enough, that we are somehow forever flawed. And God says, no. Again, you're my son, you're my daughter, I want you. And so that begins to break down the systems. And I think sometimes we really get lost in terms of, how do I deal with my shame? How do I deal with it? Because what you were saying is it just discolors everything in our life. It's like we're swimming in it.
Yeah.
It just becomes who we are. It gets in, like this virus embedded into our identity that we carry with us, and it's how we see God, it's how we see ourselves, it's how we see each other. And so that's the power, and whenever I'm working with people in their pain, trauma, counseling, it is going back to reminding them that they are loved.
Wow.
Not only by God, but by me too. The physical human expression of radical acceptance is a very powerful thing to break shame too, as God's acceptance of us. The other thing I was just going to say in terms of the lie that shame tells us It's simply this, that I am the only one.
Wow.
And so, as you know, we didn't see anybody else jumping off the cliff. We saw one person.
Right.
And so everyone else is probably making all the right decisions but me. I am in that isolation, which leads to the hopelessness and the despair and the sense of, why bother? I think there's a concept called learned helplessness. And it's this idea of I try, I fail, I try again, I fail, and then I stop trying. And I think the enemy of our freedom, the enemy of our lives says like, see, you tried and you failed, you jumped off the cliff way too many times and now it's hopeless for you.
Yeah. And you are uniquely failed.
You are uniquely failed.
Just
You're,
so powerful.
And so those are the ideas, concepts I really believe the film is tackling in such a profound way, is saying, like, let's challenge that thinking. Let's put it on the table, talk about the shame, and talk about what is really happening there, and then how do we solve that? Again, it's going back to God's love. You are loved and accepted. You belong.
And don't you think in order to deal with shame, you have to deal with the pain.
Yeah.
And I think shame is it's, for lack of a better, it's the manifestation of the pain in a lot of ways, right? And we're trying to deal with the shame. Like, let's just deal with the shame. But we really got to deal with the pain. And I felt that from the film. And I feel that in my own life. Like, all these people had a critical moment when they dealt with the pain that was causing all this.
Right.
And it makes me think of this amazing picture of Jesus. Like, how great is Jesus? Like, the best example ever. But in John 11, remember Lazarus dies, his good friend. Right. He doesn't come for 2 days. I still don't understand that. That's why I love him. He's like, I'm going to raise him from the dead.
We're good.
Yeah, we're good. And I don't remember if it was Mary or Martha who was is weeping. Jesus weeps with her. And he's like, well, where is he? And she says, come and see. And leads Jesus to the death, leads Jesus to the place of pain, leads Jesus to the place that needed to be healed and resurrected.
Wow.
And that speaks to me like, okay, Jesus, come and see. We're ashamed to show Jesus our pain. We're ashamed to talk about it. We're ashamed to go to that dark, hurtful, critical moment that probably has produced the shame and many other things that have gone on in our life. But it's like, I love that picture of Jesus. Come and see. Lead him to your place of pain.
Right.
Lead him to the cultural memory pain.
Yeah.
Lead him to, that moment in time in your history. Lead Jesus there and let him heal you there.
Wow. That's so good.
And then it's amazing what can be eliminated from your heart and your mind and your memory and the shame, I think, you can begin to process and deal with.
There's so much truth in the idea of like what you said about that I'm the only one, right? And then the truth of the pain, right? And the pain, when I think about it, even in my own life, the pain is the truth, and the truth is this was my fault. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to avoid that's just the fact.
Sure.
I did this to me.
Sure.
And it can become, which is like, I think a couple people in the film talked about, like when Jackie was talking about just masturbation and just different things, how they become, the shame becomes a blanket. Like it's secure now. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
This is just who I am. So and now it's a drug. So I'm just I might as well just keep smashing girls, because it's for at least for this 5 minutes. It's like, for that 5 minutes, this choice seemed like it was worth it, right? Just for that, but then the shame comes back, and you're like, but okay, let me just give me a break from it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's still just avoiding the fact that you did this, you did this. You were given a choice, and you did this,
right?
And rather than like running to the scream and being like I said, I have to get through this. It's gonna suck, but I have to get through this. But it's not, but where I'm at is far worse, But just that this becomes just the security blanket, and I'm gonna wear this shame as like a badge. You know what I mean? Like, no, man, nobody look for me, feel bad for me. And it's and now it's like, attention-seeking behavior. Is that what it's called? Like in psychology now, it's just now it's that. So like everybody feel bad for me.
Yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
No, don't way look, I'm so ugly. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we just do this to ourselves
Yeah.
because it's like it's still just avoiding.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What you
Right.
really gotta face is like, nah, dude, sit in it. Like you made a bad choice, homie. Like, okay, so now that we're here,
Wow.
okay, good. Okay, now let's, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
but it's getting to that is like, I'd rather hold on to
Yeah.
this limbo,
Yeah.
this shame.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because admitting the truth that I did this
Yeah.
is painful.
Yes.
So I stay away from that.
Yeah.
Keep with the blanket.
Yeah.
And then I can blame somebody else.
Yeah.
That
Right.
I did this.
Yeah.
I think shame also says, okay, I did it. I jumped. I landed in the water. I put myself in the situation. And shame wants to convince me that the Father was up there, but went back to the table, and He's left me here.
Yeah.
Sort it yourself.
Yeah.
Shame wants to create a disconnect now. Shame wants to tell me that in order for me to get back right with God, I've got to climb my way back up and beg Him for some attention. But the reality is that if that's how we see, if we allow shame to write that on us, we will stay stuck. We won't climb back up.
Right.
And I love that the film continues to tell a narrative that that's not who the Father is. But I want to ask the second part of the question for this section. It's not only what is the lie about shame, what does shame tell us as a lie, but what does shame tell us about the lie of the Father?
You make me think about two fathers. As Jesus says, there's another father, the father of lies. And God's the father of truth. And so shame wants to trigger me over here to the father of lies.
Right.
And then for me to feed off of that and make my own lies and live in that. Shame triggers that lie.
Right.
So which father am I going to trust? Which father am I going to get to
That's it.
know, to
That's
be
it.
intimate with?
Wow.
Yeah, somebody told me too, I think it might have been you, Mike. Wow.
Take the credit.
Yeah, just own it.
Let's go with
Right?
yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most things in your life, yes.
Yes. That if this love and grace is not like unfathomable, then it's not God, right? It's I may be butchering your quote, but essentially it's that. It's like if you can get your brain around it, it's probably not really what's happening.
right,
You know what I'm saying? So like the idea is that like why I believe a lie about the Father is because I can't get my brain around anyone being okay with this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
or
right.
being willing to continue with me after this. Or not making me grovel and say and,
Right.
and make penance and fix my problems. Say, I forgive you, you're good, but you need to do this. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Like I
right,
can't. Yes. I can't picture that. I cannot get my head around a grace that says you belong.
Wow. That's powerful.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if it's that, then that's the truth of God. The one you can't imagine. You know,
That's
is
powerful.
Him. Yeah.
Right. Any other good quotes you got up your sleeve?
No, but it's interesting. This topic is so stinking important, and it's something that often we never talk about. It's one of the reasons why I love the film so much. Is like, oh my gosh, we're actually using the language. Now, interesting enough, most of us never sort of use the word shame in our daily conversations, right?
Yeah.
There's sort of this, and all you need for shame to thrive in your heart and in your life is darkness, quietness,
Yeah.
holding on to it, and it will continue to fester and grow.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think so key is breaking shame is for us to be able to talk about it and know some of the symptoms of it, like the expression of shame. So you're like, okay, I don't like guys will say, I don't struggle with shame. Okay, but are you struggling with anger or rage?
Right.
Again, that shame is just the engine
Yeah.
to your rage.
Right.
Do you struggle with perfectionism or performance? Again, all of that is just coming from the engine of shame.
So powerful.
And so we got to start putting these things on the table, using good language.
Right.
Because you could talk about shame, and I do talk about shame, and it's so often people go, oh, that's not me. I don't struggle with that. Sure, I got my anger issues, I got my perfectionism issues, I got my performance issues, but it's like the church, Jesus came to address, like needs to address this in such a powerful way, and again has the cure and the solution for it. The love of God, the acceptance of God, the sense of you are forgiven, I smile every time I think about you, right? Like that's, and then you're like, me? Because I feel unworthy.
Right.
I feel unbroken.
Right.
I did all the wrong things. Like, yeah, whatever. Come.
right.
You know, it's like,
Wow.
and so this topic's so key. And for us, in order for us to actually experience freedom in our lives, we have to tackle this.
Yes.
And we have to know who planted the seed.
Wow.
The shame seed.
Wow.
Like it has been growing in our lives.
Yes.
And again, usually it's from trauma or pain early on in our lives that got put there. And we've never dealt with it.
Yeah.
And we've seen all the dysfunction from it.
Absolutely.
We've seen all the pain painful choices that we've made from it. But we've never really addressed the core issue.
Yeah.
And when we address the core issue, that's when freedom starts to happen in our lives.
Absolutely. And most of us are afraid, I think, to get exposed in this area, and so we rationalize it by saying, I don't have a shame problem, but I do have all these other problems, because I believe most people are not afraid of failure, they're afraid of the identity attached to failure.
Yes.
And so to admit these things means I am a failure, and I'm more petrified not of my failure, but the identity associated with it. So some of the examples in the film of the guy that got caught, cheating on his wife, how many times that shame to get exposed, because shame wants to convince you that some people know about your secret sins, but hasn't all the way let it out yet. And I think that's really what shame does to us. Shame says you are a failure, and if I go expose you, everyone will they'll know.
Yeah.
And they'll know what you know. They'll know what you and I know. They'll know that you have so royally messed up. And that's our fear. Our fear is to cope with it, going like, I don't have an anger problem. I'm good. But deep down, shame's like, you're not good. Welcome to the round table for the movie The Heart of Man, Chapter 4, The Lagoon. I love that part, and he comes off the cliff, and he's trying to fight back, and he's really following this person, this girl, and they end up in the lagoon. This is the moment where I'm watching the film, going like, okay. Where's this going? Yeah. And she's in the water.
Look good too.
Yeah, she's in the water, and I'm like, okay, this is a Christian film, right, guys? What am I watching? And but you can sense how real it is. This is it, right? We've all been here, and so powerful. It's not even a real. It's a corpse, and he finds that out the hard way, just like all of us do. We all find out the hard way. My question in this section is the desire of my heart bad, or is it a reflection of something bigger, something that's better? Bruce, I feel like we need to start with you.
To start with, he is there because he's made in the image of God, and he has a desire to be accepted. He has a desire for intimacy. He has a desire for being significant and secure, and he wants to be affirmed. Wow. All these desires are good. Now, when desire gets distorted, then we go to all kinds of places. We start jumping. We start going into lagoons and so forth. But the desire, all those basic desires for relationship are what God placed in us, because he is a God of relationship.
Right. Yeah.
Intimate relationship, authentic relationship. And that's what he's going for. Just doesn't know that, there's a way that seems right to a guy, and It's
Yeah.
not the right road.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not the right lagoon. It's
Right.
not
Yeah.
the right cliff.
Right.
And so I start the whole conversation. No, these are good desires. If you just see him at that one point, if we were talking
Yeah.
about earlier, you see him at that one point, you would judge him.
Yeah.
If you didn't realize it, back up. No, this is who God made me, with these good desires for intimacy, friendship, love, acceptance,
Yeah.
and security in that relationship.
Yeah, I think it's important to note, like, if you're following the narrative storyline, that like the image of, you know, the girl he's chasing, it's the same actress as the girl sitting at the table.
Yeah, I was
right?
waiting for
yeah,
that to see
yeah,
that, yeah.
which is like super important to me. One, again, from the systemic issue, to be like, oh yeah, there's the exotic brown girl, right? Is the image of everything wrong, right? You're just gonna
Right.
yeah, so yeah, there it is. There's the darkies. The darkies ruining everything. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, great.
There we go again.
Thanks. You want me to be a part of what film? You want me to talk? What do you want me to talk about here? You know what I'm saying? But the idea of, like you said, the distortion, because it's her sitting at the table was like, yo, this is your lady love, right? This one is an imagined version of her, right? And I think that if we're talking about lust and pornography and our desires oftentimes are the imaginary version of what we want. I think that you could do that in your career, where it's like there's the career you have, and then there's like the imaginary one, and this idea that, like, you know, you having BFFs that are all amazing preachers too, and you could, like, it's easy for you to look whenever this fool sell another book to kind of be like, they're coming after me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna take my position. So now I have to, like, your homies, like, I gotta muscle out my homeboys, you know what I'm saying? But it's like, that's, you imagine that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? With my spouse, and like even a little bit of transparency for myself. Like, there's like my wife, and then there's like the version I made up of her that kind of exists in my head, which is like, you know, still 25 and never had kids, and is always thinks I'm attractive, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And is ready to go as soon as I get home. And,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? Never got no problems. You feel me? Like, just this like over-sexualized, docile, like completely like misogynistic, patriarchal way to think about this woman.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if I come home and she's not that, when she's who she really is, you know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Right.
Then I gotta somehow or another get back to that fantasy
Wow.
of what she's in. When I looked at him chase her, how it's like it's her, but it's a her that you made up.
Wow.
That's not really her.
It's not real.
You know what I'm saying? So so that's when I think about like our desires. It's like it's what God has given you, but fallen. It's an imagined version of what God has actually given you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. Someone else.
Yeah, like you said, it's the over-sexualization. Like, we live in an over-sexed culture.
Yeah.
And your perspective, for me as a woman, I'm tired of the woman being,
Yeah.
she's the issue,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh, the woman, she's a seductress.
goes Eve again.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
Eve, and like,
Yeah.
look what she did. And it goes back to the garden, it's back to Eden, and back to the way that God created us. And when he created humanity, he said it was good. And
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
what God did
Right.
was good. And how he brought man and woman together was good. Like, all those things were good. But like, over time, we've colluded with this perverted understanding of sex and the relationship between the man and the woman. And here's this woman who's like this bad image, and she represents all these bad things, and he wants these bad things. And so it was this great picture that it was like a mirage. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
that's not a woman.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
you know, and then I was relieved, even though it
Yeah,
creeped
me
me
too.
out.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
gonna lie. I was like, he's kissing, then it's like, oh, I was like, I can't handle this. But it was like this relief of like, thank you for showing that women aren't bad.
Yeah.
They're not this, you know, and I think that that's so much of the struggle that we face
Wow.
is that as a woman, we feel like, oh, like,
Yeah.
you know, like that
we go
that
again.
that
Yeah.
sexist culture, the misogyny, that
Yeah.
oversex, like you feel like that, and in this it just reminds us, no, this is how God created. He created humanity, and it's good, and
Yeah.
it's beautiful, and He created man and woman to come together, and it's good,
Yeah.
and it was His desire, and pleasure is fine, and
Yeah.
you know, all these things, and I felt like that picture and that moment showed that, and it removed that stigma
Yeah.
of like, it's that woman.
She took this weak
Yeah.
man.
She's just like what
yeah,
she's
yeah.
wearing. What is she doing? Like why is she dressed like that?
Yeah.
Or why, it's like removing that that shame from women, which I think a lot of women experience.
Wow.
And if they get caught up in a relationship or they get caught up, I kept thinking, this was me, as the one man that kept having these affairs, these one night stands he was talking about, I just kept thinking about the woman in the scenario. Like, and of course the wife, and I was so grateful they showed us his wife, and we got to see that, and then obviously the full picture.
Yes.
But I think that's a beautiful picture of God too. He wanted to show us, and this film does a great job of showing us that God made humanity and it's good. He made people, and he made what he created and brought together is good.
Yeah, you just answered the question. Desire is good. Relationship is good. And when, I can't remember who says it in the movie, but lust is desire gone mad.
Yeah.
And you see it, right?
Yeah.
It's gone mad, which leads to emptiness and brokenness. And here is a picture of how most people feel when they pursue their lustful desires that are out of bounds. Emptiness. Once again, it didn't satisfy whatsoever.
I love the fact that we're just coming to this truth that our heart and our desires are good. What we're settling for is really a distortion. And what's interesting about the issue of pornography and sexuality is as you think about intimacy and vulnerability and being fully known, there isn't really an area of my life that is more sort of extreme in those things, like where I am giving myself, my body. I am fully exposed in sex. I am connecting with another individual in a physical way. Like those are things that God designed that are powerful, which is why the distortion of that can be so destructive. And so it's really the sense of like, it's okay, like what we don't want to do is sort of make sex dirty, make connection, vulnerability, intimacy dirty. It's a sense of like, no, that is the most beautiful, almost like you want to see the heart of God, you want to know who God is, like think about sex. Think about like just the extreme craziness of sex, right? And then the enemy loves, well, let me give you a different version of it, a distorted version. And that's why the ripple effects of dysfunction and getting caught up in sort of this, we never thought we'd go in the lagoon and be kissing a corpse. Right? We never thought that. And it's just a slight distortion of the ultimate plan, what God had intended. And so I think our heart is good. Our desire is good. Sex is fantastic. It's when we either sort of trust our own kind of distortions of that. We go, no, I got a better plan for that. Acting out of our own pain for that, looking for a 5-minute release versus some really true connection.
Right.
And this is why this topic's so key for us. It's like we have to talk about it.
Right.
These are powerful issues in our life.
Right. Well, I think it goes back to, desire. Here is this man pursuing what he thinks is what he wants. So there's desire that's there. I remember this author, his name's Ted Roberts. He wrote a book called Pure Desire, and he tells this story about this church he's preaching at, and afterwards this young man comes up and says, Pastor, you got to pray for me and pray that God would take away my lust. And Ted Roberts says, I looked at the young man and said, I would never pray that over you. Right. You need this, man. You understand in context what the kid was saying, but desire, we want that. And when it goes to the wrong person, when it's not channeled, when I'm not pursuing my wife, my current wife, after children, years of marriage, I need to be looking at her and pursuing her and saying yes to her in the same obsession that he has in this lustful corpse, which only leads to brokenness. It only leads to emptiness. And so then he fails, and he's got that thing on his lip that we all got, like, hey, let's clean that off. Okay, who wrote that in the script, huh? And so you have this moment of devastation and realization, and it's corpse, and once again, I failed. And why is it? And I want to ask this question, why is it that for most all of us, when we fail this way, we feel like it's our responsibility to white knuckle earn our way back to God. I failed again, but don't you worry. I'm gonna, next 6 months, I'm gonna Bible read. I'm gonna be in church. I'm gonna tithe. Let me get on the app. I'm gonna tithe right now. And gosh, by golly, I'm gonna get back good with God. Why do we do that?
I think it's the logic of the fact that, like, again, like, because you did this. Like, you did this. This was you. You walked off this cliff. You pursued this imaginary, you know what I'm saying? And you know this was stupid, right? At least when you come to your senses, like, or even during. I know there have been plenty of times where I've been in the middle of doing stuff and like, this is dumb. Like, what are you doing? This is so stupid, and you're still walking forward, you know? But I think a lot of times, again, it has to do with this just, the interconnected of the things we were talking about. Like, it's that shame. Like, and I got to try to somehow, since I did this to myself, I need to fix it. Back to our fathers. You broke it, you fix it. Right? Your brother and sister didn't do that. You didn't know. You did. You clean. You dirtied the dishes.
Right.
You clean the dishes.
Right.
Yeah, ain't nobody else
Absolutely.
to know. You do it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this ownership of, like, it's a cop out to be like, oh yeah, I messed up, so somebody come get me. It's like, no, I need to make this right.
Right.
You know?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shame is really wanting us to be our own saviors.
Yeah.
We want to save ourselves from the situation. We got ourselves into it, and so we become moralistic beings, and we're gonna do whatever we can to feel better about ourselves, and that means working my way back instead of Jesus' way back to the Father. And the other thing about shame is that it layers one upon another. So I didn't just do this once, I did this several times. And so every time I put more layers of shame and more layers of, I'll never get this right. And so I'm gonna promise God one more time.
Right.
And that'll make me feel better. And that's why most religions are based on that performance.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for Jesus.
Right.
Not based on performance.
Right.
So when we get trapped in that thinking of, I'm gonna get my way back, that's just going back to the most historic of religions.
Right.
Performance driven.
Right. Performance driven. Right.
So I feel better about myself.
Right.
And I think it goes back to that initial conversation we're having about safety and fear. Fear, the control factor of, I'm going to control what I do. I'm going to control the pathway back. I'm going to control what's good, reading my Bible every day, tithing, that will get me back in good graces. But it's still us controlling all those dynamics, which is motivated by our fear. And so that's where we have to move into the different system and say this system is not about fear, control, earning, performance. The system is based in love. And love says, God, I'm gonna screw up, but isn't this great? Let's have a party. It's like the prodigal son.
Yeah.
The prodigal son came home, and he probably had a resume in hand.
Yeah.
And he had sort of his qualifications in hand. And he's like, well, here's what I could do for you, God. And the father would have nothing to do with it. It's like, we party. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
I don't need to hear speeches. I don't need to see resumes. I don't even care what you've done.
Right.
No questions about, it's how he spent the money.
Right.
It's just come and that is so foreign to us, to our culture, to how we see ourselves, how we see, everything. And so it is about getting us into this absolutely ridiculous system called love. Radical acceptance. God not saying you have to earn or prove or do anything.
Wow.
But it's so foreign to us.
Right.
I think that there's another element of that story, that the prodigal son story, that is almost touched on in a sort of an indirect way, which kind of comes back to like the misogynistic element of blaming the girl for my lust. You know what I'm saying? That, like, as the scripture says, like, we're led away by our own lust.
Right.
And like you said, like, that wasn't her. He imagined that girl. You know what I'm saying? Because what he really wanted, the real woman, was being herself, her own beautiful self, and you walked off a cliff, right? But what I think the interesting thing about when we come back, right, and I'm pretty sure not only did he have a resume, he already planned out this apology too.
Right.
This amazing speech that was just like, shh, I don't want to hear it, right? But the reality that, like, yo, you took what you had and you pissed it all away. It's gone,
Yeah.
right? But there's another brother, right? Which means that the calf that you just killed belonged to him. That's you spent your inheritance.
Yeah.
You're taking the ring that's on your finger, that's my ring.
Right.
That's the older brother's ring. The calf we just killed, that was mine because you took your part, right? So for the older brother to stand outside like, hold up. What are you doing?
Right.
So it's almost like the older brother can say, no. You're not giving him your stuff, Dad. You're giving him my stuff.
Wow.
Because I didn't leave, right? You know, and Dad's, and what I love about the passage is like, the story's not finished. So when he's like, man, just come to the party. Like
Yeah.
we don't know if he comes back,
Right.
right? He doesn't
Right.
say it. But
Right.
the point that I think that I take away from that is like, when someone is restored, right? You don't have the right as the brother or sister of that person
Right.
to fold your arms and be like,
Yeah.
how was it, homie? Like, yeah, you enjoying that? You know what I'm saying? You don't have that right.
Yeah.
You feel me? Because what the father models was like, nah,
It's not how we
we're
roll.
good.
Yeah.
We are good. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I am now willing to not only welcome you back to the table, but give out of mine.
Right.
Right? I'm going to give you out of what I have.
Right.
And that's restorative. And that's what you're saying. That's radical acceptance. That's not just from the Father, but it's from each other.
Yeah.
Right? That like you are completely restored. And then back to the sister, the sister in the story was just busy doing her work.
Yeah.
Busy doing her work. And when he came back, it's like, well, I love you, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
You tripping. But I love you, baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for us as a culture to have the wherewithal to, like you said, to not slut shame, to not be like, you know what I'm saying, well, it's her fault or his fault, or
Yeah.
if the women would dress so modest. It's like, fam,
No. Yeah.
fam, we're family, dog. We're
Yeah.
sitting at the table. She's just as much of a member of the table as you are.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We're sitting here and the Father has accepted us all.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. Powerful.
Well, I think we try to.
was
Did I
gonna
cut
go-
you off?
I wanted to go
Did
to
I cut
you.
you off?
I wanted you to go.
You were talking about that feeling of like we gotta earn our way back, performance. I kind of piggybacking off of the prodigal son. I think my favorite part of the story is that obviously nothing surprises God.
Yeah.
He probably was rehearsing his speech. I love that. That just like the Bible just came even more alive to me. I'm gonna read that story and he's gonna be like walking back like, okay, this is what happened. Rehearsing it and like, but nothing surprises God. God knows about it. He saw it. Still loves you. And the best part of the story for me is that his father runs to him. And in ancient Jewish culture, men did not run.
You don't do that.
That was like taboo. You're not going to run to your son who has squandered his inheritance and God has done God knows what. And I just love that picture of God. We're sitting there rehearsing, okay, how can I tell God? How can I deal with the sin? How can I deal with this pain? How can I do this? And God's just like looking at us, ready to run towards us.
Wow.
And to me, that just, it eliminates that performance. I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to have the right speech and say it the right way and be perfect and perform. I simply can just come to him and he's gonna look at me and run.
It's crazy. Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Believing leads to behaving. And when you believe this about the Father, and you believe this about God, it's his kindness over here that leads to repentance over here. I don't know who said it, but I believe this with all my heart. The work of a believer is receiving. So it's not earning, it's not, I'm going to get back. The hardest work I do as a Christian is receiving. It's the hardest thing I do. I receive grace. That's unmerited favor, undeserved blessing, the peace that surpasses all. And that's the hard part that we find here in the lagoon is like, it's so Proverbs 7. Proverbs 7. I went by the young man devoid of understanding, and there he was, and she comes in and she lures him away, and it says he did not know what was going to cost him his life. He did not know this girl was a corpse. Yeah. And all who've been slain by her were strong men. Yeah. Like this is a common thing, and yet after being slain and costing his life, here's the grace of God. and it's saying to us once again, you can't even earn your way back. But how you get back is you receive my grace. I so love the cave scene because I think it erases for a lot of us this thought that I grew up in church and the thought was, if you draw near to God, but so the connotation of that can sometimes be translated to, if you get your act together, God's he'll end up meeting you halfway. But you do your half so God can do his. This totally takes that thought and it's like, wait, God is fighting for me in the cave. And if we can remember back in the beginning, he actually, even before all this transpired, he had made a way for me. He was creating a path to the cave long before I ever got in the situation, which we could talk about in a moment. But I want to land in the cave just for a moment, metaphorically speaking. And I want to talk about what did you sense there? What did you feel? What there's so much imagery happening, but break down for me, what is it saying about a good father once again? I feel like we need to start with Bruce once again.
Like, he never left your side.
Wow.
There was never a time when your stuff came between you and him. He always had his arm around you.
Wow.
He was always pursuing you. And even though you're stuck in the cave now in chains, he's always been after you. Wow. And one of the reasons I think he's done that is that he wants to remind this broken person that he's actually a saint who is sinning. He's not a sinner striving to become a saint.
Wow.
He wants to tell him that, you know what, Jesus took your shame. Wow. In Isaiah it says that that's what Jesus died for. He took our shame, and one of the best things he ever did for us was to give us a brand new shame-free identity.
Wow.
And that's why he calls us a saint. Without whitewashing anything, without pushing anything aside of the stuff that I'm doing and the consequences that I'm doing. I think he's going there in part to tell him, guess what? This is who you are.
Wow.
Yeah.
So amazing. You know, one of the things that stood out to me was also, it's not just that there's this one guy in the cave, but the community of the cave.
Yeah.
That it's not just me it's not just me that's dealing with this.
Yeah.
But you know, to go Bible just for a moment, but it so is for me, 1 Corinthians, when Paul says no temptation has overtaken you. But when it's common, this is a common, the enemy wants me to believe I'm the only guy dealing with this.
Yeah.
But it's a
And
common
here's the cave showing me, wait a second, Jim's here too? Jim never told me he was dealing with this.
Yeah.
You know, what were some thoughts that you had about that?
Yeah, I think that there's this idea of, if you take the motif, it's like you have to, there's the I'm in this when you're in the weeds, and then there's like the 50,000 foot perspective. And I know in my own life, I vacillate between those two. You know what I'm saying? Like what I'm going through versus what the big picture is. And what the big picture is something that you what you talked about, which was like, my suffering is not out, it's not out of control, right? In the sense of this, like the chaos, or this concept of like good guys versus bad guys, and this powerful like fighting, and maybe the bad is gonna overtake, but it's like, no, what that showed to me is that God in no way, shape, or form was shook by any of this. This is not out of my authority.
Wow.
Right? And so that, even in the middle of suffering, can be very comforting. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? That it's not out of my sovereign love and my sovereign control and my pursuit for you. I have calculated for this. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that's very comforting when you're looking at it up here, right? But when you're in the cave, you know what I'm saying, getting your teeth kicked in, right? There's, again, in my life, this dual sort of like, I deserve this, you know what I'm saying? This is my penance, but God, this sucks. And I want out, but maybe I shouldn't, and I can't ask for God because I did, but I don't, stuck in this. So then there's this like, even just, you know, the chains, but then the chains of sin, but then there's another chain that I think that's a metaphor for a bigger picture of the chain I locked myself in, this vicious cycle of like, I know this is wrong, I need to ask for help, I can't ask for help because I know this is wrong, so I need to ask for help. So I'm in this like circle, and at the end of it, you know, even with me just being like, I just need some help, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking that's the first time God is hearing me say this.
Wow.
And now he's starting, right?
Right,
But
right.
no. I've been pursuing you the whole time, you know, and that is where, to me, the 50,000 foot and the personal, like in the weeds
Yeah.
moment meets.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think of, for me to get biblical, I think of Daniel, right? In chapter 9, 10, 9, 10, one of those. Maybe not that biblical, right? Where he's praying, but he's repenting not only for himself but for the nation. Like, so
Wow.
he's like owning all of it.
Wow.
So like, I even think of that, like when I'm like, man, I'm in this, but I'm in this for like every dude who's suffering
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like, yo, we all need
Yeah.
this. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Right.
I'm gonna bring all of us to the table. And then how the Bible was like, you know, how Daniel said he was praying and fasting for 21 days, right? But the scripture says, no, I left day one. Like day one, I was on my way.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So like that, like, nah, I've been pursuing you the whole time.
Right,
This
right.
is not out of my control.
Yeah.
Is something that can be comforting in the middle of suffering.
Absolutely. It also, by the way, when you went Daniel 9:10, the voice, I thought you were going a little, I'm Ron Burgundy. Well, I appreciated that. That was strong. One. Number two, it also made me think of David, because David goes, where can I flee
Yes.
from your presence?
Yes.
Where in the world can I go that you're not?
That's right.
Are you with me in the cave?
Yeah.
No, I thought it was just at the banqueting table when I'm at church.
Yeah.
But now you're saying you're also with me in the club? God, how does this work?
Hold up. Yeah.
Because he doesn't, there's no separation. That you cannot be separated from the love of God. And I think the cave is such a picture of that. Tracy, what's something that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think for me too, there was this understanding of suffering that, in a way, it drew him closer to his Father.
Right.
Like, and there's something about that, and I know we're not always comfortable talking about suffering and pain in the church, and I don't know what the right theology is on it, but I do know that there's something that happens to us personally when we do go through pain and suffering.
Right.
And we find God in the midst of it. We have that moment like he did in the film. And we find ourselves closer to God. And we, like you said, he's always there. And once we have that realization, because we don't for a while, right?
Right.
We find ourselves in pain for a long time. We
Right.
find ourselves banging our head against the cave and the wall.
Right,
It's like,
right.
what are you doing?
Right.
We've all done that. But then once that moment happens where we have that realization, God never left us. He is there. There's this like amazing community or like communion you have with your Father. And yeah, you see other people. It becomes so much bigger than you thought it was. It's so much bigger than your pain. It's so much bigger than your suffering.
Right, right.
It's about God. It's about God's plan for the world. It's about God's mission for the world. It's about so much more, and you are a part of it.
Right.
There's just something, and that's what I kept seeing is like there's intimacy that happened between him and the Father.
Wow.
After the suffering,
Right.
after the pain. Which to me is who God is. It's like
Right.
your story is actually better on the other side.
Wow.
It doesn't ruin your life.
Right.
Life's not over. You don't have this past that's going to loom and
Right.
you're going to have to live with. But when you have this encounter with God,
Right.
and you have this intimacy with your father, and you embrace. And I mean, he's touching his bloody face, and I'm like, gross, like too much blood, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's getting on your clothes. That's all I'm thinking. Like it'd be
Church can't be messy.
Yeah,
Stop
it
it.
can't. But there's just a beautiful picture of God,
Wow.
and that my pain is not something to be afraid of or ashamed of, but man, the best days really are ahead. And that God and my relationship now with God, and now I have this understanding of Jesus on the cross even more and what he did for me. It just, I couldn't stop thinking about those as I was watching that bloody thing.
Right. No, absolutely. I know this feels like this section we're talking about the most scriptures, but I thought of the verse in Luke 4. I know Jesus is quoting from Isaiah, but he's like, I came to set those who are in bondage free. This is the whole reason why I've come. I've come to do this. And again, to go back to the thought of, wait, I knew that about Jesus, but this now is showing me that this is the Father's heart.
Yeah.
Now I was, Jesus is my homeboy, you know, like I got the hat and the shirt. But the Father is pursuing me? Wow, I thought that was only a Jesus thing. And so it's demonstrating, once again, an accurate picture of the heart
I think
of the
there's
Father.
another piece of beauty in there when you talk about like how the suffering sort of bonds you to him. It's kind of gets to a place to where it's like, okay, how this worked doesn't matter. Like, I'm not even, I don't know, you know what I'm saying, right? So this like, I don't know, you know what I mean? When I think about like, before I got married, you know, you just talk to different people about, you know, pursuing this young lady or thinking about marriage, and then you'd have one group that says, well, you know, love is a choice and it's an act of obedience, and so you pursue because you know this is the will of the Father, and your emotions like Father, but your emotions are going to wane, they're going to come and go, but you know what, you obey because this is right, you know what I'm saying? And then you have other dudes that I was like, man, I don't know, I can't tell you why, I just knew. Right? I don't know. I was like, I just know I'm not living another day without this lady. I don't know. We didn't have enough money. I don't know what we was gonna do. All I knew was this was it.
Wow.
You know, and those dudes are considerably happier, and their marriages are considerably more healthy.
Right.
So I think what suffering does and what it reveals to the Father is some of the stuff we were talking about offline, which is like essentially like, we can get into the scaffolding, we can get into the navel gazing and the guts and the roots and the Greek, you know, and parse the Latin. We can get into all that, but at the end of the day, it's like, look, all I know is yesterday I was blind.
Yep.
You understand what I'm saying? Today I can see.
That's it.
That's what I know.
Right.
What I know is I just got pulled out this cave. I don't know how it worked.
Wow.
I don't know what just happened. I just know I'm not in the cave no more.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that there's a joy in that. And then as you grow in the relationship, like you can, to continue the metaphor, be like, so God, how did that work?
Right.
Tell me a little more
Yes.
about, but I didn't need none of that. You
Yes.
understand what I'm saying?
Not
Even
in
when
the
I became a
moment.
Christian.
Right.
When I became
Right.
a Christian, I didn't understand the cross or
Right.
substitutionary atonement. I don't know what any of this means. All I know is
Yes.
I'm in.
That's
you know
it.
what I mean? Yeah.
That's it. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Mike, how about you? What are some things?
Yeah, that scene the cave scene was really actually very powerful as I thought about my own story, because especially the scene where he is banging his head against the stone, because I actually remember a season of my life where I'm literally in this hotel room and I throw myself against a wall because I'm so overcome with just self-hatred and shame. Like it had so festered. I'm admittedly recovering, you know, self-hater and self-loather. But I go like, oh my gosh, this is where it's like the epitome of despair. It is the epitome of self-hatred. It is like pure hopelessness. And I just remember like being in that hotel room and just feeling so absolutely broken that the only thing I could think of was actually attack my body and to throw myself against something. And I think there's a real rawness, like this humanness that when shame is fully blown in our life and our despair is just at 1,000%, it's like we just out of frustration, anger, we just like throw ourselves at something to hurt ourselves at an even deeper level. Like we've already done it psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, and then the final choice of like throwing our body against something. And you know, my story is a story of like working through those seasons of shame. I mean, I was abused, sexually abused as a child. I was involved in a very horrific boating accident in my teenage years where I actually permanently disfigured somebody. And so we talk about our stories and how things that happen early on in our lives, how that carries through. And so I mentioned earlier, my dad was a great dad, but even my dad's love couldn't overcome those traumas and that brokenness to where, and if we don't deal with it, like if we just let it kind of fester and we just go, the cave's not so bad. It's not, there's maybe some other people in the cave, and we're like, or maybe we begin to think like we deserve the cave.
Right.
The only outcome of that, of shame unaddressed, is literally the attack of every aspect of our identity and who we are. And I think we saw that in that scene. And honestly, you look at suicide, and you look at just the utter desperation of suicide when people take their lives because they are so overcome with just the sense and this belief that life is just better without me here. It is in those moments that we go like, we need somebody with a sledgehammer breaking down the wall that we see in that scene.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I felt that. I felt like, thank God, he was sledgehammering through that wall.
Right.
Because I would have it doesn't end well.
Yeah. And I think it does. It goes back to the helplessness of sin, the sin that easily entangles. And you're bound. And we don't want to sometimes admit, I'm addicted, I'm broken, I got myself in this thing. I can't, how do I get out of this? Yeah. And the picture of here comes our rescuer. Yeah. There's a reason why we call him our savior. Yeah. He's saving the day once again. He's fighting through the strongholds. Yeah. And I thought, well, there it is right there. I can't liberate myself. I can't fix myself. I've tried to. Yeah. And it never happens, does it? Yeah. But here he comes, and I think most anybody that's watching the film has to get a sense of peace of going like, man, did I relate in the lagoon? Man, I've been off that cliff. And man, I can totally relate right now because he keeps rescuing me. Yeah. I thought I'd used all my cards, but why does he keep showing up? He's obsessed, isn't he?
Yo.
He's just relentless.
And then the nerve to pull out another violin. I was like, you did not just pull out another violin.
Right.
After I just walked this mug off, I know you handmade the first one.
Yeah.
And I squandered that mug. And
right.
then the nerve for you to, rather than and again, it's the speech. He had to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're here. Dad, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Play a violin. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
What?
But I love that even before there is the beauty of redemption, I felt like it was a good depiction of what the grossness of sin looks like. Yeah. It's an old saying, but I do believe that in this showed it. Sin costs you more than you ever want to pay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It makes you stay longer than you ever wanted to stay. Yeah. And there it is, right? It's bloody, it's gory, it's disgusting, it's destructive to our souls, our relationships. It's like, this is a picture of what sin looks like. And the contrast is why it's so beautiful. Yeah. It's because now it's like, I'm back in the light. I'm back in I got the violin. So he does want to redeem, but I have to be willing. I think so many people, they not only self-sabotage, but they want to just stay. Because it's what you were saying earlier. I've taken my little blanket of shame. Yeah. I've got these cuffs, but I've got my initials engraved, so it's all right. And
I guess this is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
And I have to, it goes back to John 3 for me. John 3:16, the most famous scripture in the whole world. But the next verse is so powerful. For the light of the world has come into the world, but men, because of their evil deeds, have chosen darkness. Yeah. How many of us have sat in darkness for so long going like, I know he wants to fight for me. I know it's there, but I'm not willing to get up. Yeah.
That's the beauty of the word help. When he says help, he's going to get to hear the music again. Yeah. And the Father's right there with the violin. Yeah.
Reminds me of John 5 when Jesus is with the paralyzed man who'd been an invalid for 30 plus years. and he asks them the question, do you want to get well?
Yeah, great question.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you want to get well? Because Jesus knows that there is a change that's coming in terms of our choice.
Little
we
Tim shell.
we can stay there, we can stay in the cave,
choice.
and we actually know the cave. And we even though the cave is a horrible place to be, it's like we are comfortable, we know it, we figured it out, we can control it at some level.
Yeah.
But Jesus says, hey man, if you want to escape the cave, you just like, do you want to get well? And I think so often in my work with people, this idea of ownership and responsibility for our lives is so key in terms of our freedom. If you want to have victory over an addiction, you have to say like, I am powerless in my addiction, but I have responsibility over my choices. Wow. And that's the way through. And we can't blame somebody. We can't say it's their fault, or it's like, I can't. All those words leave us in sort of this victim state where it's like, no, we can move forward and say like, yes, I want to get well. And as soon as we say yes, man, freedom rushes. It's not like God saying, well, there's a few things you got to do and there's a few prices to be paid. It's like, okay, let's do this.
Wow.
That's good.
Here's your violin.
Yeah. It's pretty cool to see too how like the father in the story was like not in any way like moved or affected by the cave.
Right.
Or the darkness. He's just it's like it's inconsequential to him.
Wow.
His like my eyes are locked on my
Wow.
son. Like I'm not grossed out.
Right.
It's just like I'm not affected, you know.
Wow.
And again, I think coming from a position of like when your environment plays such a big role in the choices you make, you know what I'm saying? Like, so for again, speaking for like all my hood folks, you know what I'm saying? Like oftentimes you know, with no cop out or anything like that, it's like you feel like this is what you do to survive. This is just what life is.
Yep.
It's ugly, it is what it is. I'm gonna do my best in this situation. You know what I'm saying? And maybe every once in a while, you guys will send your little youth group down here to paint some schools.
Wow.
I don't know.
Wow.
The point is, you ain't gonna stay down here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, maybe
Right.
you'll build your little hipster church around the corner. You feel me? Right? And bring all your little hipsters from the valley will come down here, and you're gonna call that a neighborhood church. But you ain't like, it's a projects right behind you. Ain't nobody from
Right.
the projects here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, there's an element of it that kind of feels like, well, you're not gonna stick around.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's gross here. You know what I'm saying? But God, in his infinite love and care and complete control of our environment, walks right in and is not at all affected. Not either way. Not like, I can't believe he lived like this, or like, oh, this is gross. We just came to get my boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
That's right. And there's this profound backstory that's going on that we don't always see the first time we see the film. And that is that there are other folk in this cave. And I, in my pain, probably don't see them. Sometimes I do, sometimes I could gain comfort from them, but most of the time I'm so hurting. I'm so much in suffering that it's just me. And I'm back to believing that I am uniquely failed. It's just me. But the Father's coming in and he knows who's in there. And he's going after, like someone was saying before, going after the 99. He's going after this one sheep this time.
Right.
And he gets him out. And when he comes out, his goal is not just our healing. It's also that we would learn to be so filled with his love that we get to love others in a way we never had before. And so I always imagine when the Father's going back in for another round, business as usual, he's always going back in, that he's maybe saying to me, hey, you want to come with me this time? And we'll get a couple out of here.
Right.
But I'm going to teach you my heart for never giving up, always pursuing.
Wow.
And so come with me, and we'll get some more.
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
I don't know what to say. That was so powerful and profound. Because I want to just kind of stay here for a moment. And why would you say, Bruce, what are some main reasons why, besides my self-loathing, what are some other main reasons why I'm not as empathetic Why don't I sympathize? Why don't I acknowledge? Is there any other reasons that you can give us that you'd say, I would look out for this and not become a person that's just so into yourself? How do I help other people?
A while back you were talking about it's about receiving, and we love because he first loved us.
Wow.
But when we're not crying for help, or when we're not trusting, we're not going to be experiencing the Father's love. And so when we're not experiencing the Father's love, we're not going to give out.
That's right.
In love. That's one of the purposes of being loved, of trusting him, so that we can be loved and start on a journey of being healthy enough that we could reach out a little and love ourselves.
Wow.
To me, that's a profound trusting moment
Wow.
that he has in the cave.
Right.
He's on the beginning of a journey that he can't even imagine.
Right.
Man.
I want to go to the last section of the film, which is the best section. We're back at Restoration Hardware, and we're back at this feast. It's been provided by Old Country Town Buffet, and we're back at the banqueting table, and there's so much happening right here. It's unbelievable. I just have a couple questions with this. How do I get to enjoy more meals at this feast, and am I really invited back? Tracy, can you start us off? What are some
Happy
thoughts
to.
that you have on that?
Yeah, I know it is. It's like there's a lot you can go. Yes, you're always invited back. And how do I keep enjoying meals? I think you just keep going. You keep going back to the moment in the cave where you had that moment with God. And I think of David so much, right? Like,
Wow.
I love the Psalms. Like, it was Jesus's prayer book, by the way. Jesus knew the Psalms. Like
Right.
he's quoting the Psalms from the cross.
Right.
So there's
Wow.
something so beautiful about thinking about, King David. He's penning these words like, how, you're so far away. How long am I going to experience this? But by the end of the Psalm, usually he's like totally changed, and he's like, but God, my hope is in you. It's like this moment, and I think you just keep coming back. And it's Aristotle's right. It's like you are what you repeatedly do. What you keep doing, you're going to be in a positive way. We think of it sometimes negatively.
Right.
Not for performance sake, but I'm going to keep coming back to the table. And guess what? I'm going to find myself, I have a place at that table.
Right.
I'm just going to keep coming back. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let things keep tormenting me. I'm going to be like David. I might have that moment where I'm like, God, where are you?
Right.
But before the end of that conversation with God, I'm going to be like, but God, you're good.
Right.
Remember when you set me free before? Remember that moment where you encountered me? Remember that moment that you had or I had or we all have had with God? I'm just going to keep letting myself go back to that place. Just keep going back to God. Just
Wow.
keep going.
It's amazing.
It's not, excellence is not, Aristotle says, excellence is not an act, it's a habit.
Wow.
You are what you repeatedly do. Just
Wow.
keep going to God.
So good.
And it really is a beautiful thing when we can go, okay, I'm just going to keep bringing my pain.
Wow.
Because we think, okay, one time I bring it to Jesus, one time I go to the altar,
Right.
one time I have a prayer with God.
Right.
I'm good. I'm good
Right.
for life.
Right.
I like, and many of them said on thing, I stopped watching this, I stopped doing this, but it's,
Right.
man, it's a journey.
Right.
And I'm going to keep going to God.
Wow.
And I'm going to keep going to the table. And I'm going to keep believing, no matter how I feel, no matter what my emotions tell me, my feelings tell me, I have a place at that table. And I'm
Brilliant.
going to keep going and
So
finding God
beautiful.
right there. waiting for me.
That is amazing. It makes me think of a quote from Bruce that I have written down here. It's not as, this quoting Bruce here, it's not as important that something gets fixed as nothing is hidden. And now you have this ability to keep coming, and I'm going to keep bringing my pain. I'm going to keep, I love what you're saying, just keep showing up. And so the simple answer is yes.
Yeah, and I think there's a realization, a moment that I have to always in my own life come back to is like, you weren't kicked off the table. We were, you know what I'm saying? So to think like, hey, how can I get back? It's like, nobody kicked you out.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Like, no, this is your table. Like, I don't, what do you mean come back? You know, so I honestly like, and you can run that metaphor, you know, to its furthest iteration, but it is something that I go back to. It's like, no, you weren't put out. You know, when you were brought in, and that was it.
Period.
And that was it. So if ever you're away from the table, it's like, no, we didn't kick you out. Like, you know, sit down.
Right.
You know, so that in itself is another reminder of God's grace and his calling and his love being placed on me. And for me, I think of like I'm a fan of anything that's gonna make me shed something else and just cling to the cross or like cling to him.
Right.
Anything that's gonna make me do that. So even if it's pain, even if it's like suffering, even if it's like me thinking about my shortfalls, like I'm like, that's dope because that's making me remember that the Father gave me a place at the table.
Wow.
So that's a blessing. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's amazing. Bruce, what about you?
I keep thinking about the safety of the place, of the table. And I think about in Hebrews where God is saying, hey, come on in and tell me all about your issues and I will give you mercy and grace to help you in your time of need, which is like all the time.
Right.
And this is that place. You know, what if there was a place that was so safe that the worst of me could be known and I'd discover I was loved more, not less, in the telling of it.
Wow.
What if there was that, well, this is that place. This is part of the feast.
Wow.
And so I never have to leave the table. It doesn't matter what my issues are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how many times they're repeated. I'm safe here. Doesn't mean it's necessarily soft, like you were saying,
Yeah.
because that will take you to the cross. But a safe place, not a soft place.
Wow. It's amazing.
One of the things I was thinking about in terms of that scene is that, you know, certainly we're welcomed at the table, but I also believe that we're needed at the table. You see the scar that came from
Right.
the cave and the
Yeah.
jumping off. You see the scar, and the scar is healing, right? But it's still there, and I think we need to be at the table to remind people that we have survived and that we have overcome with the power of God. It's like my testimony is not a testimony of perfection. It's not
Right.
a testimony if I did all the right things. So
Right.
I get to be at the table. The reason I'm at the table is because I get to share the story with everyone else at the table that says, me too. I know what it's like. And that's to me the most powerful, sacred thing that we can say to each other. But if we're not at the table, number one, being honest, because we know the table say, like, we gotta share our stories. We gotta look at our scars as not a source of shame, but a source of survival. That we learned something in the cave. We have overcome something. There is a new strength in us. I always talk about the sense of when our hearts are, there's this scientific research that says we have gold in our bodies, like literally gold. And the majority of the gold in our bodies resides in our heart. And I think it's a really interesting metaphor. Like when our hearts are broken, it's actually the gold can come out. And we forget about that. Like we didn't go through all that crap, all that pain, all that blood, all that banging in our head. There's a point about it releasing the gold. It's given, I know in my own pain and my own suffering and my own brokenness, it has given me a new level of compassion for others. It has given me more empathy for others. It is, I can sit at a table with somebody who is in the cave and go, me too. And so the table is a sense of like, this is our stories. We have something to offer. Not that we get to sit there, though we do.
Right.
were needed at the table.
Wow. I loved how you could sense the thrill of the father.
Yeah.
Like, I fought for this thing.
Yeah.
Everybody better eat up. You know, like, I've been out rescuing some folks. You know, and now my family's back together. And you could sense it wasn't just the father, but I love the picture that everybody was happy.
Yeah.
Everyone this was right. The rightness that I felt in the beginning watching that first scene, I sensed it even further now because I know what it cost. I know the appreciation is up, the value is up. And I think that's what Jesus is talking about when he's like, listen, it's those that have been forgiven much, they're gonna love much.
Yeah.
So this guy's sitting at the table with a whole different paradigm. It's a whole different perspective. It's a whole different, you better appreciate what we got right here.
Yeah.
Are you thankful, you know, and appreciating his girl now?
Yeah.
Going like, man, I'm never gonna do that
Yeah,
again. Like,
yeah.
I got eyes for only
Yeah.
you.
I
And
like the real you.
exactly.
Yeah.
And just like, man, Dad, I love you. It's a whole different appreciation after you've gone through failure. And I hope that when people are watching this movie, that they get a sense of going like, okay, I relate with this on every level except for the table. The feast at the end, I have yet to experience. And if you're telling me, what you're telling me is that God has actually been there the whole way through, and that because I got it at the beginning, because I do believe that God wanted a relationship with me, but I ran. I bounced. I did my thing. But if you're actually inviting me into this feast, you pique my interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think what both of you are hinting on, or not hinting on, but saying is an incredibly important part of the Christian life. And like you said, it's the interpersonal part of it. It's that our faith, although it is very personal, it's not individual.
Never.
You know what I'm saying? And you are sitting around a table, and our part of our faith is not just God reconciling us to him, but us to each other. You know what I mean? And like you said, there was a gap at the table. Right? There's a gap here. You know what I'm saying? Like I want you in this place. You know what I'm saying? And your scars are testimony of the truth.
Right.
Which was like,
Yeah,
dude, that was super dumb. You know what I'm saying? Right? This is dumb. Yeah.
God,
and a
God take
reminder
away
of-
my scars. Nah, you gonna stay with
Nah,
those.
dude, no, you need the scars important. You know what I'm saying? But that as my sisters and my brothers and my family, as I'm sitting around the table, like I know I am a better human because Chad's in my life. You know what I'm saying? I'm a better human because, you know, Mike's in my life and because of what Mike has gone through. You feel me? And Mike is a better human because what I understand, you know what I'm saying, and what I've shown him. I'm saying, so like we're getting a better understanding of the Father. Like I always say, like a better image of God. Like I need you to help me see him clearer. Right. And understand the fullness of his love.
Yeah.
You understand? So like
Totally.
we are part of that story is we need to be reconciled to each other.
Yes,
You know what I'm
absolutely.
saying?
And it's our stories collectively are part of God's big story
Yes.
for the world.
Yes.
And then it makes it not about us.
Yes.
It's
Beautiful.
about God.
Beautiful.
But it is. It's us sharing our stories. It's us going, yeah, me too, or hey, I've gone through this, and then you can be there to help somebody else, or somebody's learned something that really impacts you. But it's not about us.
Right.
It's a collection
Right.
of these beautiful stories that God has been running after
Right.
us.
Right.
To go, come on! I have this big story for the world.
Totally.
I want to rescue all of it.
Yeah.
No matter the pain, no matter the shame, no matter whatever is going on. And that to me is you see that at that table.
Absolutely.
That to me is what's happening. It's a collection of stories that God was there every single moment.
Yep.
He was there through the whole journey, every painful part, triumphant part, God was
Yeah.
there, and then there you see it.
Yeah, they've had experience now. Again, that's why there's weight and gravity to what's happening this time. It's because of experience. And the old saying is true, a man with an opinion is always at the disposal of a man with an experience.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I know we talked about the prodigal son earlier, but the prodigal son would be sitting back at this feast,
Yeah.
ear to ear, going like, y'all can go chase, if you want to go chase that
let me
girl,
tell you something.
but
Right.
but I've got TLC in my head, don't go chasing waterfalls,
You know what I'm saying?
and it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
But I'm staying right here. You can go ahead,
Right.
but I have experience. I've experienced the Father's love. I've experienced freedom in Christ. I've experienced forgiveness of sins. And because of my experience, I now want to go help other people that are in bondage. I now want to live a life of authenticity and vulnerability and genuine connectedness. It's the experience. And I think hopefully that's the goal of this film, and that's the result of this film, is that people will go like, you're inviting me into an experience.
Yeah.
And I'm open for that adventure.
Yeah.
This is not an event. Freedom is not an event. It's an adventure. It's an experience, experiencing the love of God.
It's an invitation to live fully human. It's an invitation to have a
Right.
flourishing life.
Wow.
None of it is bad. None of it is without hope and
Wow.
joy, and
Wow.
it's flourishing.
Right.
Every aspect of
Wow.
it. That's the invitation. Fully human.
Wow.
Yeah. I loved in the stories too, like in the testimonial parts where, like you brought up earlier, they finally show the spouse, right? Where in the one story where sister was like, "Oh no, we divorced." Like I didn't want to be around this dude for a while. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you can't skip that, like, cause that's not real life.
Yeah.
That's not real life. It was like, real life is like, nah, there was some collateral damage, right? And then they came back to say, and then we remarried. You know what I mean? We came back in, and as I'm getting older, I'm like know more and more couples like that. You know what I'm saying? That were like, yeah, we divorced and got back together and had 3 more kids after. And I'm like, that's pretty epic, you know?
It's amazing.
But this just the reality of like, man, you know, life is not. There's no like. Now I'm doing my own plugging, right? This is a lyric on the album. Like that there's no like perfect villains or victims. It's just us. You know what I mean? And we're in this. We're here. I got blood on my hands. You have blood on your hands. You know, I can't this just, you know, superhero comic book motif of bad guys being all bad and good guys being, it's just not real. You know what I'm saying? Nah, it's like it's messy.
Wow.
And we're sitting at this table.
Wow.
And we're at the mercy of the Father.
Wow.
And he just loves us regardless. And I'm
So
not like,
true.
right? You know, to get even more big picture-y, you know, again, in case you guys notice, I'm black, right? But like from that, when you turn on the news and it's like, okay, yet another like unarmed black man was like shot, right? The first question was, well, did he have a weapon? Was he a criminal? Does he have well, let's wait for that. You know what I'm saying? So what you're saying is you want your victim to be innocent. You want your victim to be a perfect victim, right? And because if there's something that they've done, then that means I don't have to sympathize with them. Right. And then that is so for that motif to work, that means that we have to believe that our officers are completely, you know, altruistic, right?
Right.
But the truth is, no, they're both horribly flawed and desire and actually have a seat at the same table, right? And so the pain of this victim is he's still a victim,
Wow.
right? And this villain might still be a villain, but I got the same blood on my hands, right? And I have the same blood on that person's hands. So because at the end of the day, like you said, it's not about my story, it's not about my thing, it's about the fact that we get to sit at the Father's table.
That's it.
Yeah.
Wow. Hi, and welcome. My name is Pastor Chad Veach from Zoe Church in Los Angeles, California. We all just watched an incredible film called The Heart of Man. And I want to say thank you for joining us for our after show. Really, the point of this whole time is to hopefully make you feel inspired, equipped to begin the journey that you're about to start on. Whether you feel like that is going to be a painful process or a beautiful process, it might be both, but our hope is that for the after show here, that you'll feel equipped and inspired to walk out the beautiful path that God has in store for you. I'm joined by some incredible guests today, and I want to ask these guys today, what is your hope that the audience that just watched this film, what is your hope that they will audience will take away from the film? I want to start with you, Dan. What's your hope?
Well, I know people are going to walk away going, that was an incredible, beautifully done film. But what we really hope for is that people will have a sense of humility, knowing that everyone struggles sexually. Instead of being able to sort of look at a certain person and go, I bet they do, or I bet my husband does, or my wife does. For us to be able to have that humility, to be able to say we share common reality with regard to our struggles. But even more so, I'm hoping people walk out with a sense of hope, that I'm not bound to shame, that this is not inevitable, that I will struggle in this kind of way, that there really are roots for deep change.
How about you, Bruce?
I was really hoping that people would realize that the face of the Father represents the heart of the Father in the cave. It's in the cave that makes me weep and also enjoy so much of what God has for me, that no matter where I go, He can reach me and He will relentlessly love me.
I love that.
Yep.
Jackie, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing about everyone's story to a certain extent is you realize how messy life gets. You realize how sin kind of makes us a little bit filthy, but yet at the same time, like, Jesus really is able to clean us and cleanse us. And so that nobody's story is impossible, or nobody's story can't be redeemed. Like, that's what He does. That's why He came, you know what I'm saying? So like, He really is a good Savior. And I think the stories that we all share really show off what He does.
Trey, I want to ask you, your guys' story, first of all, so remarkable. You guys are heroes to me. And I loved your testimony. What did it take for you to start walking in the light? Maybe talk to some people here in the audience. They just watched the film. What would you say to them?
Yeah, well, as one who hid for so long, one of the mistakes I made, as Dr. Allender alluded to, I was immediately just telling everybody. And there was some harm that came from that as well. I didn't really understand at that moment what safety looked like, safety in relationships, who could really bear the weight of some of the things that I had to share. But finding those people, finding that healing community has made all the difference. I mean, and of course my journey was alone, you know, having to really learn, because I spent so many years avoiding pain, and that's what drove so much of my shame, is that I'm hurting, therefore I must not be doing it right. God's over there kind of in the audience watching, I need to fix this so He'll be more happy with me, so that I will be able to check the box, get the thumbs up. But to realize really the healing journey that I discovered really by accident is really going into the pain. And so for those maybe who want to leave and just really want to keep everything locked up in that vault, that the courage it takes just to open it and trust God with that, that He wants to meet them in those painful places. And that, you know, it's like an infected sore, you know, putting a Band-Aid on that's not going to help. It's going to hurt though for all that infection maybe to come out. But that's part of the healing process.
I love that whole thought. We're only as sick as our secret. And so hopefully the audience, many people are watching this going, I don't want to live sick anymore. I can actually walk in freedom. I can actually talk about this now. Jason, a filmmaker, a guy that's really put this whole thing on, what would you say to people that you want to encourage them walking in the light?
I think the insidious lie that shame gives is that you're alone and you're the only one struggling with this. So you better not tell anybody, because no one is going to appreciate it, or they're going to judge you for it. And I think we see that in the cave. At the end of the film, we reveal there's more guys in the cave. In fact, the cave is full of more people. But the prodigal never knew, because he was so focused on the pain and then eventually the self-abuse that comes on the heels of believing the lie for so long. You're going to inflict your own damage. The character of shame in that cave actually disappears, and the prodigal continues the harm, beating his head against the wall because he's believed the lie for so long. And I think we can all remember and think about those lies that have been in our own story and the things that we've believed for so long that they become self-talk and we just do it ourselves. And I think when we get so focused on that, our head's not up and we don't see there's a whole cave full of people. And maybe if we saw each other, we wouldn't be banging our heads on the wall. Maybe we could encourage each other not to. Or I could put a hand in there and stop him. Or I could put my arms around him and say, I'm starving too. So I think we got to get our heads up and realize that we're not alone.
That's right.
We're not the only ones struggling with this. not one person in the theater is experiencing something in their story that
Yeah.
is not being experienced by someone else in that exact same theater.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone in any of these Fathom events that are sitting there going like, wow, that must really suck to go through that. I think every person's relating. Every person's going, I see myself falling off the cliff. I see myself being lured away. I've seen myself in that cave. I've seen myself at the banqueting table, and I know what that feels like. We're all putting ourselves in so many of the scenes. Justin, you're they haven't let you talk yet.
I talk. I have a voice. You know, I think the thing that I hope that people throughout the weeks and months following this, there are certain images that are burned in all of our minds after watching this, certain things that I've watched it several times that still choke me up. And I think in the weeks and months following this, I hope that people remember those moments where they realize that God actually liked them. If nothing else, that they know that whatever is to be had after this is only going to be had in a relationship with a God that likes them. And to just remember that, remember those moments, remember those things you saw in the film, and go back to that place on a constant basis and be like, okay, he likes me, let's start again.
What was it like to play the prodigal?
I think that the thing that stands out to me the most, we were filming in the cave for 2 days. And I mean, it was dark and dirty, and there was plenty of motivation as an actor to feel like you're being tortured, especially working with Adrian, our stunt coordinator, who played Shame, who was just totally pulverizing me. You know, he's not a gentle guy. And I remember being in those moments and just asking the Lord to help me portray that just everybody would be able to see their own brokenness in the story, that it wouldn't be a gender thing, it wouldn't be a sexual thing, it would be whatever. That people would look and say, God, I felt miserable like that. I felt beat down like that. I felt worked like that, right? So it was my whole desire, I guess, and just the experience of the prodigal, like over and over again. Me and Jason would talk on the way to set every day. Over and over again, the experience of the prodigal was just tell as many stories as possible. And I didn't have any words to use, but the script, you know, and everything, but just live as many stories as possible by the grace of God in this film, so as many people that watch it can be reached. That was what the experience was like. So it was pretty intense, but it was really awesome then to walk through all those things and experience the redemptive moments as well.
Wow.
Just to live that, it felt really beautiful.
I don't know how much of our audience tonight figured this out, but at the beginning of the film, the father is making his way down this path. He's hacking his way, and that path ultimately leads to a cave. And that cave is where the prodigal ultimately finds himself. Wow. But he hasn't even been born yet, and the father's already preparing the way back for him. And I think tonight, it could be that moment. The father's been preparing the way back for somebody tonight, and this movie experience is one of the ways that he's trying to reach them. And he's trying to remind them that his face is toward them. In the midst of their darkest moment, he's actually there with his arm around them. And he's saying, there's something so much better for you. There's a better yes. Let's forget about all the no's. Don't do this. There is a much better yes. And that's the reality for all of us.
What would you guys say? What's the core message of the film? You just hit on a lot of great thoughts. I love that. By the way, we appreciate you, Jason, as being the spearhead and taking on this project, done such a wonderful job. Many people haven't seen your face yet, but this guy right here really has made so much of what you're experiencing tonight happen. What's the core message of this film?
I think that the gospel is a lot wilder.
Wow.
A lot wilder than you ever thought. And that your own heart, frankly, is a lot darker. And if you can own the fact that the goodness of God is a lot wilder, and your own darkness is not going to in any way snuff out any of God's goodness, then if you can hold that paradox together, something's going to begin to change in your heart.
This movie has a message that is not like the prodigal learned his lesson and now he's going to pay attention next time and he's going to work harder, he's going to fix this, and isn't God good? No, the message is you can't work on your shame. So don't try. It's not going to work out well for you. Only God works on shame. He can only resolve that. And that's the core message for me of this film.
I think the reminder for me too, we see at the beginning of the film there's this feast. Everyone's together and feasting, and we're built and designed for community. And then when the prodigal goes off, he's alone, he's by himself. And then at the end, he's back in community. That to me was depicted so many times over the course of the film. Just a reminder, you're not alone. Go find the community that awaits you.
Well, I would just say, as one of the filmmakers, it was much more than just making a film. I found myself in moments deciding, do I want to expose this thing in me? Do I want to hide it? Do I want to let somebody into this part of my story or do I not? And so like the day in and day out of making this film was us living out what we wrote and what we shot and what we edited, and it gave us the opportunity. Do I want to live fully known? And can I find relationships where they know me at my worst and love me the most? And I think those sacred friendships, and that's what I would hope tonight, is that you be thinking about who is that in your life that is safe? Who in your life will walk with you at your worst and love you the most? Because those relationships are the catalyst to freedom from whatever we find ourselves in.
There's so much honesty in the film. In this room, so much honesty. And yet, it's not bound to shame. It's possible to be able to tell something of the worst of our lives, but not be bound to shame, but to have, as you described well, that banquet of sensual play, laughter, joy. That's really what the Christian life is. It is redemption for the sake of being able to come together to enjoy, and enjoy our own and other people's presences. So that is what I'm most proud of.
I'm leaving this film with so many of visuals of when I get into the day in and day out, long past this film, I've got these visuals imprinted in my mind of the Father pursuing me, the kindness of the Father that leads to repentance, all these things that are those reminders well after, again, the film, to remember. I love what they've been able to do through this movie of just depicting that for all of us.
I'm excited about, it's actually done well. I think a lot of Christian stuff is just so corny. And so I think to be a part of
Let's
something.
name a few. Kidding. It's not about that, Jackie.
Right.
Stay focused.
That's you. I think to be a part of something that's actually done well and creatively and is excellent is exciting. But also one that when shown will give people kind of this room to confess.
Yes.
I when I watched it, I imagined old Jackie watching this film, and I feel like it would have been impulsive for me to confess. Like, I have to, because he's coming. He's came. Jesus is here, and if that's what I need to do to get him, then that's what I need to do. And so I think I'm excited to be a part of something that is showing an interesting side of God that some people don't see.
I'm excited to be about something that's not about the formula, not the quick fix.
Wow.
I think so often in Christendom we're looking for that quick formula. Here's my 1, 2, 3, and it's all going to be fixed. And we all know innately that it's not that way.
Right.
Life is much more complex than that. And I'm just proud to be a part of a project that is not bashful about that. That's really inviting people on a journey that starts tonight. Maybe when you just seen this film, and now there's some things beginning to stir. And I'm glad that we're doing this as well to begin to give people hope that, hey, you don't have to have it fixed before you leave the theater tonight.
Right.
This begins a journey, walking with the safe people like we've talked about, to find people that you can share secrets with, because we're only as sick as our secrets.
That's it.
And if we can have that safe place to talk openly, true change begins to take place.
Exactly. Talk to me about this. Some of you guys, you're in a film together, but this is the first time some of you guys are meeting. Is that tell me about what's it like to interact with each other?
I just want to know, did you really jump from that cliff?
I did.
Stop, did you really?
I did, yeah.
How high was that?
It was like somewhere around, I don't know, I'll let Jason answer this question. He always makes it sound better than it actually was, so I'll let him answer.
Well, I know, because every foot we went up, money went up.
Liability.
Well, the truth be told, we got to set that day and we had planned to jump off a much smaller cliff. He had planned on it, the crew had planned on it. And when we got there, there were some people there already, and we saw another cliff that looked much higher, and we thought this would be better. And so we walked over to that edge with Justin. He was open to exploring it, and I just remember seeing him look down, look back up, and he looked at the director and I and just said, this is one take. This is one take only. And so we ended up doing that. We had our stunt coordinator do the walkthrough, and he did it. The thing that shocked me, though, that we didn't talk about, was he locked in on that horizon. And at that time in the film, he's being wooed by something else. He's being enticed by something else. And he committed to that so much. And he looked at her and did not look away. And he looked at that place on the horizon all the way down to the water. And I remember when he got out, I asked him, I said, what were you thinking? And he's like, every captive free. We all have that moment where we lock in on the horizon. And again, to your point, it could be sexual or not. There is something in our story, in our life, that has grabbed our attention like that.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity. The Father's playing vigorously behind us, wooing us back, inviting us to play the melody with him. And he will never stop playing. His melody will always be. And even if we go off that cliff and we find ourselves back at the edge of that cliff again, because at the end of the film, the prodigal's back on that cliff again. And you've got to be thinking to yourself, he's gone through all this stuff. Like, why in the world would he be there again?
Right.
The Father's still playing. He's not grabbing him by the neck and pulling him back.
Yeah.
He's just playing still.
Wow.
Jason, as you were sharing that, isn't that a picture of our lives? We think this is the plan, but yet there's a bigger plan. There's a bigger story, and it is wild, like you were talking about.
Terrifying.
Earlier. Yes.
I mean, seriously, when we're asking people in this movie to begin to grapple with their own sexuality, I can imagine after this after show, people walking to their car with that question of, do I say something?
Yeah.
Do I not say something? Do I confess? I mean, there are just some important questions that people have got to wrestle with. And there are, as you put it so well earlier, there are no quick cures here. Just confessing is not going to make it all better tomorrow morning. But the ability to say, I am not going to live a life of deceit. Then eventually, I have a context, my spouse, my friends, trusted people, to begin to share that story.
Well, and Jason, to bring your point back, is he's on the cliff at the end of the movie, but again, there's that reminder of the relentless pursuit. He doesn't go off the cliff at the end. He turns back and goes toward the Father, and that was, to me, just such a beautiful picture, is that we're going to get it wrong, but we're also going to get it right. And the right is remembering the love of the Father.
And that is the hope. That no matter how many times we've gone off that cliff, and all of us have gone off that cliff many times, you can turn back and he'll still be there. He's not going to get further away. He's not going to play a different tune.
Right.
He's not going to stop playing. He's going to keep playing. And you can walk back and play. And he wants to play with you. That's one thing that Dan did a great job in the film, is just emphasizing that he is at your bed in the morning and he wants to play. He wants to explore the cosmos with you. He wants to go with you on your ride to work. He wants to be with you on the ground as you play with your kids. Like, he cares about those moments. I don't think we get that or grasp that. I think the gravity of that is so big, and you did a really good job of explaining that.
You did.
I love that.
I mean, you were scripted. I'm kidding. It wasn't.
I did exactly what you asked me to do.
I'm glad you brought it to Dan, because Dan, I want to ask you, you've been a leading voice on sexual abuse for so many years. What did the film do for you, and what are some messages that you were really appreciative that we talked about?
Well, the fact that none of us are done. I mean, just having watched the film at least a handful of times, going, there's so many more things in my own life that I need to address. And that intersection between shame and past trauma and abuse, it's always there, always working to bring us back to that sense of we're not enough, we're worthless, there's something ugly and unappealing about us. If we have the courage to walk into that rather than ignore it or pretend it doesn't exist, then we're going to be miserable. In some ways, this film is really meant to own parts of our own story that will make us miserable, but all for what purpose? Not, as you put it, several put it so well, not to be able just to do it better, but to be invited to a party that none of us deserve to be at, and yet we've got a place and our name is there in order to be able to play and celebrate with the God of the universe.
One of my favorite lines of the film is when you say, "Lust is desire gone mad." Talk about that for a moment.
Well, I just know that when we're talking about sexuality and lust, people get too hyper-focused on certain elements, but we can lust to have children. We can lust to get rid of our children. We can lust to have more power, more money, and almost all of those exactly is that cliff. It's a cliff that's going to take us away. So if we don't deal with the fact that we are all fundamentally idolaters, we've got gods that are not God, for us to own that and to know, and that's one of the things that, again, the film did for me, was to ask of my own heart to go back, how much do I look forward to the party? Is it really what my heart most wants? And just seeing the imagery, it was like, I want to eat and drink to the glory of God.
To the glory of God. I like how you slid that in there. To the glory of God. I think that's, so well said. Watching the film, that visual of the banqueting table, the feast, the community, the multi-generational. I was thinking, why would you want to be anywhere else?
Right.
Wait, I've compromised some forfeit, something that will never amount to the joy and the community that God has presented for me. Why would I ever choose something different? I love that scene and that picture that, you end up, Justin, you had a rough go. Very lost. Thank God for grace. What were you guys eating there at that table? Was it steak? Did you guys do gluten?
We had a pig or two, like whole
Kahlua pig, yeah.
Kahlua pig
So not
roasted in the
vegan.
ground. The guy our friend of ours that did this food, it's like literally one guy is up there on the side of this mountain in the middle of nowhere.
Wow, I love that. Bruce, when you saw that table, what does it make you think of?
Well, it makes me think back to your question of why wouldn't I always want to be there?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's partly because I want to be known, and I'm afraid that I will be. And I've got this thing going on all the time, even now. I still wrestle with it. And that's one of the things I'm most proud about the movie is that it speaks to me that I can't get well on my own. I cannot get healthy in isolation.
Yep.
I must have this community. And it inspired me, it empowered me to believe that again and again and again.
When I saw that scene, I thought of today and I thought of heaven, specifically because it was so many different kinds of people. Everyone didn't look the same, everyone wasn't the same age, and I think a lot of times we isolate ourselves even from people who we think won't understand because they're different, because their struggle might be different, because they jumped off a different kind of cliff. But I think when you consider God, most of the time, if he's not speaking through scripture, well, he's always speaking through scripture, but he's also speaking through his church. And so it's like, man, like he wants to draw us even through community and through people and through conversations, whether that's over meals or over, a tall latte. Whatever the case may be, I think even coming back to the Father and understanding who he is has to take place within the people that he's reconciled to himself, which is the bride of Christ. And so I just love that scene, and the food looked great.
What would you say to the female audience?
Sin, pain, shame, brokenness is not a gender issue.
Right.
It's a humanity thing.
Right.
And I think the way we experience it obviously is probably distinctive, but I think at the same time, that just comes a part of the package. You're born, problems. That's just how it is. But I think also we do have a God who has welcomed us both male and female, into his presence, if we would believe in his name and turn from the sins that we find ourselves bound to. And so I think I would say the same thing to a woman that I would say to a man, is that your issues, your difficulties in life, your struggles, the things that you find yourself continuously enslaved to are not stronger than God. They're not. I think the world around us would tell us that. I think our failures would make us believe that. But I think when you really look up, as Jason said, when you look up and see, if God created the universe, if he created the world, then surely he is strong enough to lift off everything that we are enslaved to. And so I think, I don't think the encouragement will be any different. Because we're not different.
What would you say, Bruce, if you could say, my prayer for someone watching, people have just watched the film, they're here at the after show, what would a prayer of yours be?
A prayer would be that they would be patient with themselves. Grace specializes in imperfection. So if this thing is worth doing at all, and it's worth everything, then it's worth doing clumsily. That's the way we start. We don't know how to reach out, and we don't often know how to respond when people reach out to us. And so my hope would be that they would be patient with themselves and realize they're on schedule. If you're making that Tim's shell, if you're making that choice, you're on schedule, and God will take care of the rest.
I love that. Hey, thank you so much for joining us at this Fathom event, watching the film Heart of Man. I hope that you can bring this anywhere you'd like. We've brought this to our church. I'm a pastor. of a church called Zoe. We're bringing this to our community. Pastors, if you're out there, you can bring your church along to be a part of this film. Or maybe you feel like you want to do some personal reflection, take some time for yourself to process what you've just learned. You know, that's why we've created for you the Heart of Man curriculum. Really, the heart behind that is to serve you, so you can identify what God's saying, identify some key steps that you need to make in your journey with Jesus. We're believing that as you go through the curriculum, as you read and you write, as you learn about these things, that you'll have a greater understanding, not of what the movie was trying to say to you, but of what God is trying to say to you. Remember, there's nothing that you've done, there's no place that you've gone that's so far away or too bad for God to love you. We love you, we're for you, and we're with you. God bless.